Chapter 1103. The man in Tang's suit punched out. Momo could feel a gust of strong wind even though he was just behind him. Due to the power of the man in the Tang suit, a large part of the thick fog in front of him was instantly cleared. Because of this, the appearance of the three ambushers also became clear. Black clothes and bronze mask. Their masks were almost the same as that of the mysterious bronze-masked man. Momo's heart shuddered. At this moment, the man in Tang's suit's fist strength was too terrifying. One of the three men in black was directly hit by this terrifying fist strength. This man in black spurted out a mouthful of blood and directly fell to the ground after the punch. It was just a matter of a moment. The other two black-clothed and bronze-masked men were shocked when they saw this. At this moment, the movement in the courtyard had already alerted the logistics personnel of the Administration Bureau in Wulong Mountain Villa. At this moment, the sound of the logistics personnel rushing over was heard. The two men in black with bronze masks saw the situation was not good, seemingly wanting to retreat. "Fire Cloud, evil god. Let's fight next time," one of the men in black with a bronze mask shouted at this moment. He put his hands together and opened them. Suddenly, a dense icy air exploded in the courtyard. Like liquid nitrogen being pressed out under high pressure, the entire courtyard was instantly covered with a layer of white frost. The man in the Tang suit snorted coldly at this time. His palm sucked, and a few pieces of frozen wudong tree leaves rushed into his palm. Then, they directly shot into the large expanse of ice fog. After a miserable scream, the ice and frost in the courtyard gradually dispersed. Momo fixed his eyes, seeing a man in black with a bronze mask hanging on the broken courtyard wall. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. But one of the men in black had seized the chance to escape. The logistics personnel rushed into the courtyard at this moment. The man in Tang's suit didn't pay attention to them. Instead, he directly walked to the first man in black, taking off his bronze mask. After taking off the mask, the man in Tang's suit's face slightly changed. Mr. Blind's hearing was extraordinary. He frowned at this moment. "Dead?" The man in Tang's suit nodded. "This guy is ruthless. He broke his own meridians and died. It seems he's a man of sacrifice. So is that one." As he spoke, the man in the Tang suit looked at the man in black hanging on the wall. Then, he looked at Mr. Blind and said, "Old Blind, guess who this guy is?" "Who is it?" Mr. Blind tilted his head and his ears twitched. The man in the Tang suit said in a deep voice, "He's one of those guys who left during the mobilization meeting yesterday. Blind, it seems like your senior brother is much more prepared than we thought." Mr. Blind remained silent. He turned around and walked into the room. The man in the Tang suit shook his head and said to the logistics team, "Deal with these two corpses and try to contact Yen Xiaoxi. Tell her what happened here." "I know." The group of people nodded respectfully. After that, the man in the Tang suit slowly closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, he exhaled even more slowly. Miraculously, when the man exhaled, the fog around Crouching Dragon Mountain Villa quickly dispersed. Not Fa-li. Momo was shocked. The man in the Tang suit used his chi to blow away the fog. How powerful was his internal strength to be able to do that? However, after the man in the Tang suit exhaled, the fog that had been dispersed slowly gathered again. "That's not interesting." The man in the Tang suit shook his head and yawned. Then, he followed Mr. Blind back into the room. "Oh right, kid, come in." Momo was startled. "Senior, you called me?" The man in the Tang suit said, "Yes, you. Come here and tell me what the two guys from Xianyuan Palace used when they attacked. The more detailed the better." Momo was startled, but he could only follow him in. But, he had already memorized the name of Fire Cloud, evil god. In the karst cave, a figure staggered forward with a piece of parasol leaf stuck on his back. Finally, he arrived at his destination, the end of the karst cave. At the end of the huge and dry karst cave, flames were burning all around as the light source. Here, there were many people like him, dressed in black and wearing bronze masks. These people were sitting in a row in meditation. In the center of the karst cave there was an altar about 10 meters high. This injured man in black stumbled all the way to the bottom of the altar. Above the altar, a man in a bronze mask walked to the edge and looked down. "Your Honor, Fire Cloud Evil God is too powerful. Your subordinate is useless, I couldn't catch Qingxiazi." The man in the bronze mask on the altar said indifferently, "Fire Cloud Evil God is known as the strongest human under Shinryu. It's reasonable. However, you three went together and only you came back. I think the other two's identities have been exposed. Your Honor, your subordinate is useless." The injured guy lowered his head. "It's okay." The man in the bronze mask said indifferently, "Your meridians have been broken by Fire Cloud Evil God's true force. Do you know what's the only thing you can do for our great cause?" "Your subordinate knows." As he spoke, the man in black removed the bronze mask on his face, revealing a horse face. It was none other than Uncle June, Tian, who was the first to stand up and question Yen Xiaoxi during the mobilization meeting at the Crouching Dragon Villa. This Count June Tian even took off his clothes. He folded them and placed them on the ground. Then, he placed the bronze mask on top of the folded clothes. Count June Tian's gaze was indifferent, his expression focused. When he was completely naked, Count June Tian knelt on the ground and said in a deep voice, "Thank you, Your Honor, for your kindness in nurturing me." After saying that, Count June Tian stood up. At this moment, below the altar, a 2-meter-tall door slowly opened. A blazing aura rushed out from the opening of the altar. The inside of the altar was actually filled with the aura of flames. Count June Tian shouted, "For the sake of the past saints! For the sake of opening the path to immortality!" Inside the karst cave, those meditating men in black shouted at the same time, "For the sake of the past saints! For the sake of opening the path to immortality!" Amidst the shouts of the men in black, Count June Tian opened his arms. His face revealed a fanatical smile as he directly rushed into the furnace within the altar. "For the sake of the past saints! For the sake of opening the path to immortality! For the sake of the past saints! For the sake of opening the path to immortality! For..." Amidst the continuous shouts, the bronze-masked man on the altar turned around and walked in. At the center of the altar, within a huge crystal, there was a small figure sealed within. Wang. Suddenly, the bottom of the crystal lit up. The brightness then spread to the entire crystal, as if it was filling something. The bronze-masked man looked at this crystal for a long time. "You have already alarmed the Fire Cloud Evil God. I'm afraid that the following actions will be much more difficult." The bronze-masked man looked behind the crystal pillar. A figure walked out from behind the crystal pillar. It was Gongsun Xiu from Xianyuan Palace's Qian Division. They don't know the time, and even more, they don't know the location. Once the Jade Dragon Pillar is implanted, it will be protected by Wang's power. No one will be able to touch it. Besides, your clan's 4 Seasons glazed book isn't just for show. Gongsun Xiu quietly looked at the bronze-masked man for a long time before saying, "Be careful. There's still a mysterious power within Mount Tai." The bronze-masked man frowned. "You mean that mysterious woman from another clan who broke your Xianyuan sword?" Gongsun Xiu's face darkened, but he still nodded. "Since that night, that woman hasn't appeared again." The bronze-masked man slowly said, "I didn't sense any malice from her, but we have to be careful. This is for you." The bronze-masked man waved his hand, and a fist-sized pearl directly charged towards Gongsun Xiu. The instant this pearl entered his hand, Gongsun Xiu's pupils contracted slightly. He subconsciously looked at the bronze-masked man. "This is a dragon pearl?" The bronze-masked man said indifferently, "This was left behind after that dragon fiend died. Perhaps it should be called Evil Dragon Pearl. With it, you should be able to activate the Yellow Emperor's bloodline to the greatest extent." Gongsun Xiu sneered, Aren't you afraid that I'll use the evil dragon pearl to deal with you? Go. The bronze-masked man said indifferently, Remember, don't use this evil dragon pearl for too long. Otherwise, even with the protection of the Yellow Emperor's bloodline, you'll inevitably be eroded by the resentment of the dragon fiend or, with the Yellow Emperor's bloodline, I'm afraid you're the dragon fiend's favorite carrier besides the dragon vein. Gongsun Shiu looked at the bronze-masked man, retreating step by step and finally disappeared from the altar. At this moment, the altar returned to its tranquility. The black-clothed people below the altar also closed their eyes, quietly meditating. The bronze-masked man took out a talisman. This talisman burned in his palm in an instant, turning into ashes, scattering on the ground. At this time, the bronze-masked man turned his hand, and the scattered ashes on the ground began to return to his palm. The ashes reassembled. In the end, it turned into a charred talisman seal. The bronze-masked man suddenly sighed, waving his hand, and the ashes scattered on the ground again. He murmured to himself, How on earth did that young man under the ancient well restore the fragments? The appearance of the thick fog in Mount Tai cut off all the signals to the outside world, causing the area within more than 100 kilometers to be plunged into chaos. Song Village was also covered by the thick fog. I've seen this fog before. Song Haoran did not know whether it was because she had thought it through or because Song Haoran's words had an effect. The princess who called herself New Dawn did not say anything about fending for herself. Of course, Song Haoran still kept a safe distance from her. You've seen it before? Song Haoran asked curiously. Princess Chu Yang nodded. This is the fog released by the Four Seasons glazed book, a treasure made from the remains of the Count of Wind and the Lord of Rain. When the dynasty was building the Great Wall, it was invaded by evil demons. Later, they borrowed the glazed book of Four Seasons and summoned a thick fog of wind, rain, thunder, and lightning that covered 1,000 miles. Only then did they exterminate all the evil demons. However, this treasure belongs to a secret holy land in Kelowna, and it won't be used easily. Now why? Song Haoran frowned. Let's not talk about the purpose first. However, if this thing continues to exist, I'm afraid it's not a good thing for the common people. Let's not talk about the chaos inside. It's probably a troublesome thing for the people outside to explain. Princess, since you've recognized it, do you know how to solve it? Princess Chu Yang shook her head. Unless the person who cast the book stops or directly destroys the Four Seasons glazed book, there's no other way. Song Haoran said helplessly, If that's the case, I can't bring you to your father's tomb. At this time, even the satellite positioning system was no longer working. Song Haoran believed that he had a good memory, but he couldn't recognize the roads within a radius of 100 kilometers just by relying on his memory alone. Moreover, Princess Chu Yang had once said that if the first emperor really died, the place where he would be buried would definitely not be on Mount Tai. Under the situation where the road was blocked and communication was cut off, it seemed that the only decision they could make was to stay here and wait for a change. The thick fog grew thicker day by day. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days had passed. At this time, the thick fog had covered an area of nearly 200 kilometers with Mount Tai as the center. It was a vast expanse of white all around, completely turning into an area where one couldn't even see their fingers if they stretched out their hands. All the public systems had long been paralyzed, and countless crimes were breeding in the thick fog. In many places, the power of the generators had long been exhausted. At night, this place had become the most terrifying place. People could only close their doors tightly and stay indoors, waiting for the outside world to rescue them. However, as the days passed, the situation gradually became more and more dangerous. Some people, like blind flies, finally found their way out of the huge thick fog and returned to the normal world. Only then did they know that because of the thick fog, the outside world had long been in a mess. A large number of experts began to rush to the edge of the thick fog, and all the major media reporters also swarmed over. A helicopter flew at the edge of the thick fog, but it didn't dare to drive into the thick fog, because any electronic equipment that got close to the thick fog would instantly malfunction, and vehicles would also directly stop driving into the thick fog. At this time, a taxi with a blue plate slowly drove to a small town outside the thick fog. "3 ladies, I can only take you here at most. You can't go any further. It's under control." The taxi driver raised the barcode at this time. "Rico, pay up." "Ah? Me again? My food expenses for this month are almost gone." The young woman who was called to pay at this time begged bitterly. "If it's not you, then is it Yukiko? She's just a newcomer, and hasn't passed the probation period yet. It's only 1,800 a month." The fierce woman hummed at this time. "Then what about you?" the fierce woman continued humming. "Do you know that my Luaccio is going to study abroad soon? Do you know how expensive the foreign tuition is? What about the living expenses? If I don't save money, do you want him to eat soil outside? Don't worry, I will give you a public account later. What about snacks? Diet? But this time seems to be your initiative. Chief editor didn't agree to let us come here? Make more noise. If you make more noise, you won't be able to eat lunch later. Save the lunch money as accommodation expenses." Chapter 1104. On the 23rd, we came to Dai Town, a beautiful rural town, but it was no longer as peaceful and beautiful as it used to be. It is now like a gorgeous dancer, standing on the stage, waiting for the arrival of customers one by one. In the small hotel, Renziling stopped her fingers on the keyboard and looked at the folder named Renziling's Book of Strange Events on the screen. She frowned and quickly deleted the 2 lines of text. She drank a cup of hot tea and went to the window, looking at the thick fog outside the town. It was said that the fog was still spreading, and it was estimated that the town would be covered in a few days. At this time, some people in the town were worried, and many people had taken their families out to avoid the fog. However, there were still some businessmen who stayed in the town at this time. There was no other reason, because the business opportunities were almost unlimited at this time. The travel expenses were several times higher than before, and even a bottle of water could be sold at a price comparable to a large scenic spot. Their customers were naturally the media from all sides. Of course, it was unknown whether there were other people except for the media. However, the local town government had issued an announcement that the people here had to leave in 3 days at the latest. As a reporter with dreams, Subeditor Ren didn't want to be a salted fish. This time, Subeditor Ren resolutely used her accumulated paid annual leave to come to this place with Rico and Akiko after failing to fight for a job with the boss of the newspaper office. If they didn't find anything, then they might really lose everything. Renziling rubbed her eyebrows and leaned against the window, looking at the thick fog like white clouds. Pure white, pure white, pure white. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Rico pushed the door and came in with a pot of boiled water in her hand. She complained, "Sister Ren, the boss of this hotel is too greedy. He even charges for the tap water. It can't be helped." Renziling shook her head. "We came late, and it's good enough that we have a place to stay. Where is Yukiko?" Rico sat on the edge of the old single bed. She said that she wanted to walk around outside and see if she could find anything. At this time, the old bed made a squeaking sound, and Lizzie's stomach made a rumbling sound. She had eaten all her food on the way and had no time to replenish it. What was worse, the unscrupulous sub-editor Ren exploited Lizzie's savings crazily and unscrupulously in the name of reimbursement all the way. Renziling sat down again and pretended that she didn't hear the cooing sound. She said nonchalantly, "You're really proactive." In fact, she didn't want to take Yukiko with her at first, but Yukiko accidentally heard her and Rico discussing this matter. She showed great interest and took the initiative to ask to go with them. Although sub-editor Ren's life was very safe, she was unexpectedly a guy who liked to guide newbies. After proposing the condition of paying her own expenses, sub-editor Ren happily brought this newbie with her. Maybe he found the awareness of being a reporter? Lizzie lay on the bed with her arms and legs wide open. She stared blankly at the ceiling. So hungry, suddenly, Lizzie seemed to smell something. She sat up at once and said with her eyes shining, "Sister Ren, what are you eating? It's so fragrant." At this moment, Ren Xiling was pinching a wax pill in her hand, and then swallowing the thing inside into her mouth and drinking water. Wuji Baifeng pill. Ren Xiling threw the crushed wax pill into the trash can. It was sent by Luoqiu. He said that it was a New Year's gift and he wouldn't come back on New Year's Day. Oh my God! Why do I feel like I've aged 20 years in an instant when he gave me this toy during the New Year? If I didn't feel better after eating it, I wouldn't eat it. Speaking of which, Sister Ren, is your skin much better recently? Lizzie looked at Ren Xiling from head to toe. You feel younger? Do you still have Baifeng pill? I often eat it. Go away. Ren Xiling pushed Lizzie with her palm. I finished the last one. Do you want the wax pill? Stingy. Lizzie lay back on the bed pitifully like a caterpillar. Ren Xiling felt that Lizzie was not like a human being. She shook her head and began to wear her boots. Even a newcomer was working hard to dig for information. She couldn't fall behind. Lizzie, let's go out to ask for information. Lizzie, what do you want to eat? It's so fragrant, strawberry flavor. At this time, Lizzie was biting a piece of pink rubber with a film in her mouth and chewing it. Ren Xiling suddenly shivered and rushed to Lizzie. Lizzie, wake up! Don't eat this thing with your mouth. Ren Xiling pulled the pink rubber film and wanted to take it out of Lizzie's mouth, but this thing was too elastic. They pulled and stretched it more than 10 centimeters. Lizzie, give it to me. Ren Xiling said loudly. I don't care. Let me chew it. Give it to me. The pulling continued. At this moment, the door was pushed open excitedly. At the same time, a voice sounded, speaking with a Japanese accent and not very fluent Chinese. Sister Ren, I found someone who can be interviewed? Yukiko blinked her eyes. Ren Xiling looked at Yukiko blinking her eyes and blinked her eyes subconsciously. Her hand suddenly loosened, and the pink rubber band suddenly retracted and bounced directly onto Yukiko's nose. She cried in pain, I don't eat with my nose. Wait, Yukiko. Ren Xiling opened her mouth. I'll wait for you outside. At this time, Yukiko quickly closed the door, and then came the sound of footsteps downstairs. Ren Xiling froze for a moment and then sat down. She sadly took out a pack of women's cigarettes, lit it, took a puff, and exhaled the smoke. Through the glass window, the smoke seemed to be integrated with the thick fog outside the town. Sub-editor Ren said softly, Damn, deep in the thick fog, Yen Xiaoxi almost lost communication with the outside world. Although the backup could come by foot, it was too inefficient. Because all electronic devices could not be used, even the research of the Jade Dragon Pillars had to be temporarily stopped. They could only rely on manpower to transmit information back and forth, which greatly limited the actions of the administration. Under such restrictions, the third, fourth, and fifth Jade Dragon Pillars had already appeared without a sound. Fortunately, the appearance of the fifth Jade Dragon Pillar had allowed Mr. Blind to successfully calculate the possible location of the sixth Jade Dragon Pillar. At this time, Crouching Dragon Villa had released thunderbolts through Taoist techniques and temporarily converted them into electricity to maintain the daily infrastructure. Since the battle on the hillside last time, the remaining people of both sides were not as enthusiastic as before. At this time, less than half of the people came to the conference room. The people of both sides who were doubtful didn't leave Crouching Dragon Villa, but there was a trend of not putting in effort. Su Mubai and Madame Purple Star would attend every meeting. According to our calculations, the sixth Jade Dragon Pillar is likely to appear in these three places. At this moment, Yen Xiaoxi was marking the locations that Mr. Blind had deduced on the map. Upon sight of the three locations, Purple Star could not help but frown and ask, Section Chief Yen Xiaoxi, how did you deduce these locations? The administration also has talents who are proficient in arrays and calculations. We used a large number of computers outside the fog to calculate these 3 places, Yan Xiaoxi said indifferently at this time. Chief Yan. After a moment of silence, Zixing said, let's not care about the intentions of the 71st generation Tian Xn. Should we be more honest? Yan Xiaoxi frowned. Young Master Zixing, what do you mean? At this time, Zixing said in a deep voice, I heard that Crouching Dragon Villa was attacked some time ago. However, the attackers were dressed in black and wore bronze masks. There were a total of 3 of them, and 2 of them were killed. Is that true? It's true, Yan Xiaoxi said expressionlessly. At this time, Zixing said again, in fact, the 2 so-called assassins who were killed actually committed suicide. Is that true? It's true. Zixing's eyes narrowed. And these 2 men of sacrifice were among the group of Tao demons who opposed you that day and left. Is that true? It's true. Chief Yan, why have you been hiding this matter? Zixing said coldly. If it weren't for the fact that my clan still has some resources, Chief Yan would have been planning to keep it a secret, right? In order to prevent unnecessary panic, I gave the order to keep this matter a secret. Yan Xiaoxi looked straight at Zixing, then at Taoist priest Su Mubai. The 2 of you, the current situation is very unfavorable to us. I don't know what the consequences will be if this news spreads, so the best way now is to hide it. Yan Xiaoxi. Zixing said in a deep voice. I'm staying here entirely for the sake of that agreement, but I'm not the target of your sweet words. Perhaps after your administration has those advanced weapons, you think that you can handle all of this without the support of other parties. The 2 of you, the most important thing now is not to quarrel, but to stop this as soon as possible. Su Mubai hurriedly said at this time, this thick fog has been spreading, and no one knows how much it will cover. I believe that the outside is now a mess. I'm afraid that no matter how much force the country exerts, it will be difficult to cover up this matter. So, Chief Yan, I think young Master Zixing is right. It's not that we don't want to cooperate, we just hope that we can get the most basic respect. Yan Xiaoxi took a deep breath, and after a while, she said, I suspect that among the Tao demons, there are probably many who have followed Tian Xn for 71 generations. Zixing and Su Mubai looked at each other. Zixing frowned and said, But when we were caught in the fake cave abode? Yan Xiaoxi said, I'm afraid, including the 2 of you, among this batch of Tao demons who were caught, many of them were willing. This can very well explain why Tian Xin for 71 generations could catch so many Tao demons silently. Indifferently, this is just a speculation based on the current information, and it may not be accurate. But if it's accurate, we don't even know how many people in Crouching Dragon Villa are our own people. Su Mubai continued and then smiled bitterly. Under such circumstances, even the people around you may actually be. This is indeed a very bad situation. Su Mubai looked at Zixing, and his meaning was very clear. You, young Master Zixing, may also be one of Tian Xin for 71 generations. The meeting room suddenly fell silent. After a long time, Zixing sighed and said in a low voice, Can we win this battle? Yan Xiaoxi was about to speak, but at this time, a person from the administration hurried in. This person looked very serious, but there was surprise in his eyes. Section Chief, we received a message from Captain Ling Feng. Yan Xiaoxi, Su Mubai, and Zixing instantly stood up. The place where they appeared was near Dai Town. The people who appeared were the agents from the administration led by Captain Ling Feng, as well as Tsang Jinshui and Chu Xinghe. Due to the obstruction of communication, it was already half a day later when the news reached Yan Xiaoxi. Then, it took almost another half a day before Yan Xiaoxi and the others set off from Crouching Dragon Villa and rushed to Dai Town to meet up with Captain Ling Feng and the others who came out of the Penglai treasure vault. They had been missing for almost half a month. In this half a month, the outside world was in turmoil. Now that they had returned, it really made everyone excited. especially when Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe of the 4 heavenly spirits of the demon race returned. That's it. That night, everyone met up. Captain Ling Feng pointed to an empty space behind the granary. We came out from this place. However, after all of us left, the passage disappeared. However, President Baijie seems to still be working hard. It's very likely that more of our people will come out from here. Of course, this is just my speculation. Dr. Zhao, who came with the team, hurriedly asked people to set up all kinds of instruments and surrounded the place where Captain Ling Feng pointed. Captain Ling Feng, Song Jinshui, and the others also told everyone what they had experienced in the Penglai treasure vault, the terrifying things about Gaia. Their narration made Yen Xiaoxi and the others who had rushed over feel a chill down their back. When there was such a place in the world, which had the power to destroy almost all the elites of the demon race and the demon race in an instant, its degree of despair seemed to be much more terrifying than their current opponent, the Tianxin 71 generation. What's this? Unlike Yen Xiaoxi and the others who couldn't digest this shocking news, Dr. Zhao looked curiously at the thing in an agent's hand. This was taken out from inside. There are some other things over there. As he spoke, the agent waved a short metal stick in his hand. The metal stick shot out a beam of light in an instant. The agent used the beam of light to hit the big rock next to him, and the big rock was instantly cut in half. Chapter 1105. After Captain Ling Feng and the others appeared, about 23 hours later, the passage outside the granary opened again. Then, a Taoist who looked miserable walked out of the passage with a frightened expression. The researchers who stayed here quickly gathered up and raced against time to study the passage, under the command of Dr. Zhao. Interestingly, the passage lasted less than 3 seconds, and it was one way. But the researchers of the administration were obviously not discouraged because of this, because if there was a first, there would be a second and a third. Perhaps the next opening would come soon. Indeed, just as they had expected, the next opening was 6 hours later. A chicken monster called Daffy came out. The researchers swarmed up again, which scared Chicken Monster Daffy, who had just escaped. If he didn't see many familiar faces at this time, he would have thought that he was in danger again. According to the description of Captain Ling Feng and the others, Dr. Zhao speculated that the flow of time in the Penglai treasure house in the passage was different from that in the normal world. The rough estimate might be between 260 and 275 times. Then Yen Xiaoxi came with people. Everyone began to fill in the details of what happened in the Penglai treasure house according to the Taoists and monsters who came out. They already knew that the 100 Tribulations Taoist was working hard in the treasure house to save the surviving Taoists and monsters. This was indeed very exciting news. As for the Tao demons who had escaped from danger, including Captain Ling Feng and the other agents from the administration, they gradually understood what had happened in the outside world while they were missing. However, the passage out was one way. Even if the people outside were worried about what happened in the Penglai treasure house, they couldn't make any effective rescue, except for asking the researchers to study the principle of the passage. These Taoists who escaped from the treasure house quickly joined the action of the 71 generations of Heaven's will. It was difficult to maintain effective instant communication in the thick fog, and movement was also greatly limited. Therefore, Yen Xiaoxi made a decision to airdrop the 6th Jade Dragon Pillar at the 3 possible locations that had been calculated. Even if the fog covered the place, the terrain would not change. The height of the fog obviously did not reach the height of the sky. The satellite could locate these 3 locations. The operation was temporarily scheduled to open the 3rd passage, which was the day when Chicken Monster Daffy came out, at 8 o'clock in the evening. The operation this time was divided into 3 groups of people. In order to balance the overall strength of the 3 groups of people as much as possible, the Administrative Bureau and the Tao Demons, a total of 3 groups of people, were almost scattered. Moreover, this time they were going the elite route, and each group would not have more than 10 people. As for a large number of agents from the administration, they were sent into the thick fog area to carry out rescue operations. The target of their rescue was the ordinary people who had fallen into the fog. It was impossible for this country to leave its citizens in the lurch. In other words, the safety of the citizens was the most important thing to this country. In fact, the rescue operation had always been going on, but in such a harsh environment like the thick fog, ordinary soldiers were of limited use. The fog covered a radius of more than 100 kilometers, and without the help of transportation, relying purely on manpower to search, even the rescue team was in great danger. It was a race against time. At 8 o'clock in the evening, in the dark night sky, 3 military aircraft flew over the thick fog and quickly dispersed. This time, the members of the airdrop operation did not have to calculate the landing point. These were some powerful individuals who could do vertical airborne without the use of parachutes and still live well. This is a special stun grenade. Whoever discovers it first, throw it into the sky, and we'll rush over immediately. This was the last instant message Yen Xiaoxi made to the members of this operation team before they were about to land in the thick fog. Time quickly jumped to 2 days after the airdrop. Yen Xiaoxi and the others did not come out of the thick fog area, but they received a message from Taoist priest Su Mubai. In the thick fog area where electronic equipment failed, Taoist communication methods could be used, but in terms of efficiency, they were not as high. According to Taoist priest Su Mubai's message, the 3 teams had successfully landed at the predetermined place, but they did not discover any enemies so far. Not long after, the passage opened again, and this time, it was the Black Tortoise Tribe's elder, Ming Tushan, and the vice president of the Tao Association, Master Huanyang, who walked out of the passage. These two were the leading figures of Taoist demons, which greatly excited the people, but the way in which Master Huanyang and Ming Tushan came out was somewhat indecent, as if they were kicked out by someone. The huge turtle shell of the Mingtu mountain could allow them to move stealthily under the ground. This was quickly used in the thick fog area. Therefore, after coming out, this small team of survivors from the Penglai treasure vault took a simple rest and immediately threw themselves into this operation. However, there was a small interlude. Yen Lu, one of the members of the Vermilion Bird tribe rescued by Ming Tushan from the Lexia ship in the treasure house, disappeared. Yen Lu was in a coma, and after coming out, he was arranged to stay in a tent without anyone watching over him. Those researchers were not medical personnel, so naturally, they would not watch over him all the time. At this time, everyone was worried about the situation in the thick fog, so naturally, they neglected a temporarily unconscious member of the demon clan. Furthermore, no one had expected Flamelode to disappear after waking up. However, due to the current serious situation, Yen Lu's disappearance had to be put aside for the time being, because at this moment, the outside world had really become chaotic due to the continuous fermentation of the thick fog in Mount Tai. Because rumors were flying everywhere on the internet, it seemed that even a giant like the country did not have a better way to deal with it at this time. At this time, everyone's attention was focused on the thick fog area. After Dr. Zhao waited for the passage to open but to no avail, he directly hid in the tent and studied the things that the agents of the administration brought out from the Penglai treasure house. At this time, the magical passage opened again. However, the opening this time was much shorter than any of the previous times. In the blink of an eye, only a black shadow shot out at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, it swept past the fields outside the granary and landed on the nearby road. The nearby instruments only had time to jump once, and the researchers who were dozing off only opened their eyes after hearing a rapid alarm, but they could no longer see anything. What is love? The old Santana still used a CD player. In this era, it was almost an antique car. But there was no other way. This was almost the best car Ren Xiling could find to rent, and it was very expensive. In the car, Ren Xiling sat in the driver's seat, and the 3 of them shook their heads along with the music of the CD player. Why are we shaking our heads? Lizzie was very puzzled at this time. I don't know. Unconsciously. Renziling was stunned and suddenly quivered. She stopped and turned off the music. The music was poisonous. On the road, there were very few vehicles. Along the way, there were signs of road control everywhere. Renziling had already searched for almost half a box of gasoline nearby, but found nothing useful. It had been 3 days since they came to this place. Seeing that the thick fog was approaching, it would not be long before they were forced to evacuate this place. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that the coverage area was too large and they couldn't cover it all, there probably wouldn't be any space for these news media to operate. However, even so, traveling like this still carried a certain degree of danger, right? Yesterday, several reporters quietly sneaked into the controlled area, and it was said that they were directly arrested by the military. And then there was no more and then. Of course, because of the relatively small population in Dai Town, most of the people who came here were local police, and the military had not been seen yet. There was no how to take care of things here, so Renziling was very careful and almost did not go back to do anything illegal. Of course, for the people in the news industry, not taking risks meant that they could not get first-hand information. Over the past few days, apart from taking a few photos of the dense fog and interviewing the local residents, there was almost nothing useful. It was not like he could say that a cultivator was going through a tribulation in the dense fog, right? Look, what is that? Just when Renziling was about to drive the car back, expensive, Yukiko suddenly pointed to the front of the windshield. At this time, a black shadow suddenly rushed to the small road where they were at. Emergency brake. At first glance, it seemed to be a figure rolling on the road for several meters. Renziling suddenly unfastened the seat belt, rushed out of the car, and ran to the figure. "Sir, are you okay?" Renziling originally intended to check, but a foul smell suddenly interrupted her. Then Rizi and Yukiko came to Renziling at the same time. The three of them stared at each other with a dumbfounded look on their faces. The man with the smell not only had a broken arm, but his belt was also pierced through by a very thick tree branch. At this moment, he was lying on the ground, motionless. Renziling frowned and quickly took out the phone. "Hello, is this Yao 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 Yao? I'm on the GT 231 National Highway, and I found a man in a coma. Can you call someone over?" "What? I'm too busy, please wait." "Hello, hello? I'll go. What do you think?" Lizzie blinked her eyes, but she kept staring at the one-armed man who was very attractive. Renziling shook her head and said, "He said he was too busy. If he's not dead, let's deal with him first?" "Sister Ren, this person's origin is unknown. Will he be in danger?" Yukiko looked a little nervous at this time. "Let's take a look at him first." Renziling frowned, then reached out and pressed the man's wrist, then looked around. "There's still a pulse. Let's move him to the side of the road first." However, just as they were about to work together to drag the one-armed man away, the one-armed man suddenly opened his eyes and stood up directly. For a moment, Renziling's heart suddenly jumped. She was scared. Rizi's pupils shrank at this time. She turned her palm to her back, and a sharp ice thorn instantly formed in her palm. After the man with the broken arm stood up, he stood motionless, lowered his head, and didn't move for a long time. After all, Renziling was bold. She picked up a branch from the side of the road and poked the shoulder of the man with a broken arm. Unexpectedly, this poke directly poked the man with a broken arm to the ground again. It seems that he fainted again? Yukiko looked for a while and said, "Come." At this time, Renziling walked behind the one-armed man and reached out to grab the big branch, so Riko walked to the other side, followed by Yukiko. The three of them worked together to lift the man with the broken arm. Unexpectedly, the man with the broken arm was much heavier than expected. After a while, they finally moved him to the side of the road. "What should we do now? What else can we do? Wait for someone to come." Renziling shrugged and said, "Do you want to carry him to the car?" Rizi made a retching action. "There is a river over there, Let's get some water to wash it. Renziling pinched her nose and said. After a while, they barely cleaned the man with the broken arm. Renziling poked the man's chest with the branch in amazement. He is quite strong, but it's a pity that his arm is broken. It couldn't be simply described as strong. The man with the broken arm had muscles comparable to a bodybuilder's, and his whole body was exuding male hormones. Sister Ren, you look so wretched. Rizi couldn't help but rub her forehead. But what hasn't Aunt Ren seen before? Tsk. Renziling picked up the branch at this time, lifted up the man's trousers, and then looked in with a smile. Tsk, a wax head. It's so small. It's not even half of my Luacio's. Sister Ren, you. Rizi didn't know where to start. I heard that Luacio is not your biological son? So what? Renziling stared at her. I heard that when you married him, he was already in junior high school? Rizi seemed to have discovered something incredible. Renziling knocked Rizi's head with the branch, rolled her eyes and said, What are you thinking? Can't you grasp the size when wearing swimming trunks? Oh, so only men are allowed to measure cup sizes through swimsuits, but women are not allowed to measure sizes through swimsuit pants? What you said is very reasonable, and I have nothing to say. Well, it seems that there is no problem. Don't quarrel, he seems to be awake. At this time, Yukiko had to stop Renziling from going crazy. She felt that since she came to this woman, her worldview had been refreshed. As Yukiko said, the man with the broken arm slowly opened his eyes at this time. Sir, how are you? What happened? Renziling suddenly changed into an intellectual look. Chapter 1106. On the road, she picked up a strong man, but he had lost his memory. Later, she found out that this strong man actually had a great background. He was a domineering CEO or something like that. After that, some indescribable things happened. She successfully turned the tables and became the wife of the CEO. Then, she cursed her husband to death and inherited a huge inheritance. In the end, she kept a few pets and relatives and lived a happy life. She was selected to be in the victory group. Impossible, it would never be possible. Which domineering CEO would break an arm, have feces all over his body, and then appear on the road in the name of justice? You really don't remember anything? Renziling didn't throw away the branch in her hand. The one-armed man had actually been awake for quite some time. Other than saying that his name was Wang Hu, he could not remember anything else. Yes, the name of a domineering CEO was Wang Hu. It was really too lame. This was also one of the reasons why the three girls could tell that Wang Hu was definitely not a domineering CEO. Wang Hu still shook his head. He could not recall why he had lost his arm, why he had shit on him, and why justice had descended from the heavens. In addition, they didn't find any personal information on Wang Hu, no wallet, no ID card. What do we do now? Leaving Wang Hu aside, the three of them began to quietly discuss. Because it was obviously not because of the tyrannical CEO, the new trio of the news agency clearly lacked interest in bringing Wang Hu along. In the end, they decided to just leave Wang Hu to the police. However, they waited on the highway for several hours, but there was still no sign of the police. Renziling, who was really impatient, dialed the number again. Unexpectedly, the reply she got was that the local government decided to evacuate the people in the town in advance. At this time, the police, auxiliary police, and so on were maintaining order and couldn't find time to come out. Then, she quickly hung up the phone. This was the time when people's hearts were struggling. Anyway, Wang Hu had woken up, and it looked like he could not afford to die so easily. Perhaps his family and friends were already looking for him, so there was no need to continue to worry about him, right? Although Wang Hu probably wasn't an overbearing CEO, he obviously wasn't an ordinary person either. There must be some unknown story behind him. It came from what Auntie Ren called the intuition of a journalist. But before the three of them could finish their struggle, a Santana of the same model suddenly appeared on the road. Soon, 4 men with different figures got out of the santanas of the same design but different colors. Judging from their clothes, they seemed to be locals, probably. And judging from the situation, these 4 men didn't seem to be good people. "TSK, miss, do you need help?" The leader of the group, a mustached man, approached them with a smile. He looked kind and amiable, if he was not holding a butterfly knife in his hand. Rensselaer couldn't help but frown when she saw the 4 men closing in on her. Although the surrounding area had become very chaotic due to the thick fog incident, and there were even some people who had evil intentions and would do some outrageous things, Rensselaer didn't expect this kind of thing to happen to her. She quickly assessed the fighting strength of her side. Rico was a standard foodie. Unless she was robbed of her snacks, she would burst out with a good fighting strength most of the time. As for Yukiko, she was a third-year college intern, petite and exquisite. It was already good that she didn't scream at this time. Rely on herself? Rensselaer didn't have the confidence to protect Rico and Yukiko from the hands of 4 men with weapons. "I didn't expect to meet another group of fat sheep, and all of them are women. TSK, good figure, the older one is mine." The leader of the group laughed a few words at this time. "Who the hell are you calling old?" But before Auntie Rin could get angry, a shadow suddenly rushed out in front of her. Since it was Wang Hu. Then, an incredible scene happened. Wang Hu rushed up to them. Then, his arms moved so fast that they were like afterimages. With one punch, each of the 4 criminals was sent flying in an instant. Then, they fell to the ground and vomited blood. They fell to the ground and did not get up. "Are you okay? I think these guys want to do something bad to you. You saved me, so I can't just stand by and watch." Wang Hu turned around at this time and said indifferently. Although one of his arms was broken, his male hormones were off the charts at this time. Oh my God, although he is not a domineering president, maybe he is a martial arts master? Rensselaer couldn't help but open her eyes wide at this time, then her whole body trembled, and quickly rushed to the front of the 4 criminals to see if they were killed. Being robbed was one thing, but it was another thing to kill people. If Wang Hu killed people in order to protect the 3 of them, it was another thing. She saw that the 4 criminals were on the verge of death at this time. If it weren't for their strong bodies, it was likely that they would have died directly, but now it seemed that there was not much difference. "Don't just stand there, come and help." Rensselaer turned around and shouted at this time. Rico didn't say anything at this time, and directly came to help Rensselaer move these seriously injured people into the car. "These people intended to do something bad to you, why did you save them?" Wang Hu frowned at this time. "Shouldn't scum be cleaned up? You saved them, maybe they will continue to harm people in the future." "Are you a policeman?" Rensselaer suddenly turned around and asked at this time. Wang Hu shook his head. "I can't remember, but I don't think so." "Are you a soldier?" Wang Hu still shook his head. "Then who gave you the right to kill people?" Rensselaer shook her head at this time. "Killing the whole family just because of a disagreement?" "Brother, this is not a doomsday crisis. The order is still there, and the country is still there. Do you think you are good at fighting, so you can kill people casually? It's true that this society is impetuous, but do you think it's justifiable for you to explode in this society? I didn't save them because of hypocrisy, I just respect life." Wang Hu frowned but did not say anything. Rico also had a driver's license, so she drove the originally rented car, while Rensselaer drove the gangster's original car. She sped up all the way, and finally drove to the door of the only small hospital in the town. Seeing that the 4 criminals were sent to the emergency room, Rensselaer breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, in the chaos, Rensselaer finally went to the front desk of the hospital, and there was a bag of things next to her. This was some property that Rensselaer found in the gangster's car, which seemed to be robbed on the road, and maybe the car was robbed. She used the hospital's phone. "Don't tell me you are busy. There are 4 seriously injured robbers here, and their property is here. Do you want to come?" After hanging up the phone, Renziling wrote a few lines of words with a pen and paper at the front desk. The 4 guys just sent to the emergency room are robbers. This is stolen property. I will call the police. Then she stuffed the paper, turned around and rushed out of the hospital, and drove the rented Santana quickly away from the hospital. On the way, Renziling called Wang Hu out of the car and said to him, "Let me remind you, it's better not to tell others that you beat people. Anyway, you saved us, so we will pretend that we don't know about this matter. There is some money here. Do you see it in front? That is the police station. You go in, tell them that you are injured and have amnesia, and let them help you. We are also taxpayers, we can't let them take the money for nothing, right? Well, we will meet again, and we will meet again." The car drove out, leaving Wang Hu standing there in a daze, as if he couldn't react. The car had been driving for a long time, and it stopped when it encountered a red light on the road. At this time, Yukiko suddenly said in amazement, "Sister Ren, that guy is still behind. He is following us." Renziling was startled. Although she didn't drive fast, even if she ran all the way, she might not be able to catch up, right? Renziling looked at the rearview mirror in surprise, and found that Wang Hu was really behind the car at this time. Renziling quickly stopped the car by the roadside. After getting out of the car, the 3 of them came in front of Wang Hu. "Didn't I ask you to go to the police station? Why are you following us?" Renziling frowned. Unexpectedly, Wang Hu said at this time, "I am not following you, but her." Wang Hu looked at Lizzie at this time, frowning, and said, "I think we are the same kind." Lizzie blinked at this time, and subconsciously put her hand into the bag of chips, but the chips were finished. "Crazy!" Renziling whispered, and grabbed Lizzie with one hand. The 3 of them quickly got in the car. "I am telling you, don't follow us again." She accelerated and rushed out. Wang Hu frowned, watching the car leave, and finally quietly followed. He did feel that the one called Lizzie was the same kind of him, but he couldn't remember why. In addition, Wang Hu also felt that he seemed to have forgotten a lot of things, but he didn't want to remember. It seemed that using the identity of Wang Hu would make him feel inexplicably relaxed. At night, a black shadow quietly shuttled in the alley. However, the place where the black shadow passed, the ground instantly condensed a thin ice mark. It was like half of a poisonous snake hibernating in this alley. At this time, a person who looked like a tramp, carrying a big bag of rags, passed by. In an instant, the black shadow rushed out, caught the tramp, and rushed into the alley again. A horrified scream rang out. When the warm blood slid into its throat and entered its body, it made a comfortable sound. At this time, the tramp's blood had been sucked out, and his body was dry, and completely cut off his vitality. At this time, the black shadow was in its palm, and on its palm, a blue flame slowly rose, with a different kind of beauty. The blue flame illuminated its face. At this time, it was looking at the blue flame in its palm with infatuation. If Ming Tushan was here, it would probably recognize that this was the beginning and end of Yen Lu. The flame demon power of the Vermilion Bird clan has completely disappeared, and in its place is this frosty demon power. Yen Lu muttered at this time. He felt that his current physical condition was unusually good. The pain of the terminal illness that had tormented him since he was born seemed to have disappeared, and power was continuously flowing out from all parts of his body. At the same time, he felt very cold. Only when he swallowed blood, this cold feeling would be reduced, but in the process of swallowing blood, his power would be strengthened. What Yen Lu didn't know was that he was originally undergoing genetic modification in Lexia. This could have removed the hidden dangers in his body and completed a genetic transformation. But in the end, this transformation was not completed, because he was released from the container by Ming Tushan and the others for unknown reasons. Although the original terminal illness had been removed, in contrast, the incomplete transformation also caused another defect in his body, and his personality seemed to have changed again because of this incomplete transformation. It was late at night. Yen Lu quietly climbed to the rooftop of a building above the alley. He looked at the thick fog in front of him. No one knew what he was thinking. In this action team, in addition to the 5 people from the administration, there were 2 demons and 3 Taoist priests. Among the members of the nameless administration, 2 of them were directly wearing black hoods, and only their eyes and mouths were exposed. One of them had his eyes closed the whole time. At this time, the Taoist priests and demons evaluated. This time, Yen Xiaoxi planned to form a new team after everyone, saying that it was to balance the strength of each team. But the other 2 teams consisted of Tsang Jinshui, Yen Xiaoxi, Immortal Huanyang, Young Master of Purple Star, and so on. This team was the weakest. Although these Taoist priests and demons believed that their strength was above average, compared to the bosses of the other 2 teams, there were many areas where they were not good enough. Could it be that these 2 mysterious people wearing hoods were the secret weapons whose combat strength was off the charts? But whether or not they were the secret weapons, they hoped that the 6th Jade Dragon Pillar would not appear at their location. But the god of luck didn't favor them. The more they didn't want to happen, the more it fell on their heads. They saw a flash of light. A strong wind instantly blew away the thick fog around them, and the surroundings became clear and visible. At this time, the mysterious person wearing a black hood directly rushed out, and with lightning speed, he came to the source of the flash. At this time, a jade dragon pillar was slowly rising from the ground. This mysterious person who rushed out first was also a tiger. At this time, he directly slapped down on the jade dragon pillar, and forcibly stopped the rising jade dragon pillar. At this time, the earth was shaking violently. At this time, a figure rushed to the side of this fierce person from the administration at an extremely fast speed, and slapped down. In a hurry, this fierce person from the administration also slapped down with his palm. Only a bang was heard. The fierce person retreated and returned to the front of the crowd. Chapter 1107. The name of Fire Cloud Evil God wasn't something that couldn't be mentioned, and it wouldn't cause trouble if it was mentioned. It just didn't want to be mentioned by many people. He started his martial arts career at the age of 16 and entered the Tao at the age of 26. Then, he dominated the world, went to Kunlun, entered Fengdu Ghost City, pulled down the Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain from the altar, and broke the turtle shell of the former patriarch of the Black Tortoise tribe. The Fire Cloud Evil God's glorious feats had been earned at the expense of many big shots in both Taoist and monster spirit realms, and even now, there were still many big shots who had been sprawled on the floor by the Fire Cloud Evil God, and there were waves of sadness when they talked about the past. At this moment, the people realized that the mysterious man who wore a black hood and looked like the flying tigers in Hong Kong movies was the one from the administration in the Forbidden City of the capital city. This team wasn't the worst, it was the strongest. They wondered about the background of the other flying tigers who wore a hood. Unexpectedly. What's Fire Cloud Evil God? How come I've never heard of him? At this time, the mysterious man wearing the black mask said indifferently, "Those who know me all call me an old man. Come on, you're all so powerful. I'll fight with you. If you lose, you'll remember that it was me who lost to you." F***CK. What happened to the fierce man who beat up Kelowna and the Taoist and monster realms? How shameless. At this moment, the few Taoist and Monster Realms members in the team all had the same thought. However, the other members of the administration didn't seem surprised. They were used to it. After all, Fire Cloud Evil God didn't care about his face at all. Things like bullying the weak and beating up children, he had to do it several times a month, okay? Old man. The handsome young man on the Jade Dragon Pillar looked indifferent. Then, let's have a try. He raised his hand and pointed his palm at the old man. Then, he suddenly spun his hand. Boom! Suddenly, the ground exploded, and the soil mixed with grass instantly splashed out. A 3-meter-wide crater split open under the old man's feet just like that. At this time, the old man laughed loudly. His palms danced in front of him. Suddenly, a sky full of palm prints swarmed out and weaved into a big net, directly covering the handsome young man. At this time, the handsome young man was not in a hurry. His fingers formed a sword seal, and a ray of sword chi shot out, directly breaking the palm net. The old man instantly turned his palm into a fist and changed his attack style in an instant. His palm technique became a fist wind, and the sound of wind and thunder was actually produced. The momentum was vast and mighty. At this time, the handsome youth did not continue to stand on the jade dragon pillar. Instead, he leaped out. At this instant, the figures of the old man and the handsome youth went from slow to fast. In just a few breaths of time, both of them had already become a series of afterimages. They were so fast that it was actually impossible for the naked eye to lock onto them. It was just that the aura of the two people exchanging blows rose crazily, pressuring until everyone had a feeling of not being able to breathe. While the two of them were locked in a fierce battle, the other mysterious member wearing a black mask suddenly shouted, "Everyone, attack the jade dragon pillar." Everyone shuddered. It was indeed not the time to watch the battle. They had more important things to do. However, just as this small team was about to destroy the jade dragon pillar, the sound of rushing and killing came from all directions. It was actually a dozen black-clothed men wearing bronze masks. Obviously, the sixth jade dragon pillar's planting was not only guarded by the handsome young man, but had already been prepared long ago. At this time, facing the attack of these black-clothed men, everyone had to hastily fight back. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of the Taoist's bullets being shot out rang continuously for a while. The fight between the old man and the handsome young man suddenly stopped. At this moment, the two of them turned around and stood on two huge rocks respectively, looking at each other from a distance. The old man said, "Is the warm-up enough? If you don't show your real strength, the jade dragon pillar over there may be destroyed by us." The handsome young man chuckled, "As you wish." On his body, a wisp of white flame slowly rose, and then a shadow gradually appeared behind him. Xianyuan War Soul. The old man laughed at this time. "Not bad. The Gongsun family of the Xianyuan Palace is a powerful figure." The handsome young man didn't speak. He waved his hand, and streaks of sword energy turned into clear sword blades, overlapping each other and slashing toward the old man like a raging river. At this moment, the old man took a deep breath and turned his palm into a saber, hacking out a huge saber energy that was dozens of meters long. Chi, 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 chi. The saber energy and the sword energy were in a stalemate for a moment. The handsome young man was actually Gongsun Xiu. He had the strongest bloodline of the Yellow Emperor in the Gongsun family, and his strength was close to that of his predecessors. It had been hundreds of years since he entered the martial arts world. However, the fire cloud evil god appeared only in the last 100 years, but his strength was no less than that of Gongsun Xiu's. The saber energy and the sword energy melted at this moment, and it seemed that no one could defeat the other. Gongsun Xiu narrowed his eyes. Obviously, his opponent was a well-matched opponent, and it would be hard to determine the winner if they continued to fight. Fire Cloud Evil God. Gongsun Xiu dropped his hands. The Xianyuan Palace has been known as the Holy Land of Martial Arts since ancient times, but in the last 1,000 years, there have been many powerful warriors who could even compete with the martial arts of the Xianyuan Palace. Obviously, you are one of them. This is a good thing, because it proves that even the Xianyuan Palace didn't block all martial arts. Fire Cloud Evil God, I appreciate that you didn't get your cultivation easily. How about joining me? I can allow you to open the book collection vault of the Xianyuan Palace. This seems to be a good condition. At this moment, the old man's hands also dropped down. But it's a pity that I promised someone to open a bottle of wine after this matter is over. If I agree, that bottle of wine will be buried in the ground forever. That's a pity. The condition I promised you is still valid. Gongsun Xiu waved his hand. when you think it through, come to me. Today I'll beat you back for now." The earth trembled slightly at this moment, and a golden sword shadow appeared from the ground. The old man retracted his ruffian aura, and his eyes turned solemn. The Xianyuan sword, the sword shadow finally fell into Gongsun Shiyu's palm. In an instant, a huge pressure descended from the sky, and the earth trembled even more horribly. In the distance, the agency's Tao Demon joint team that was fighting with the black-clothed men felt a chill in their hearts. This terrifying aura didn't stop here, but spread to dozens of kilometers away. The other two joint teams also felt this terrifying pressure. Gongsun Shiyu slowly raised his arm, and then chopped down. Before the huge sword aura, the old man's hood was instantly torn apart by the overflowing sword aura, revealing his white hair. The strong wind even caused the skin on his cheeks to move. But the moment this unparalleled sword shadow was about to chop down, the old man suddenly opened his eyes, and a red-black aura flame surged in his palm. Then, the old man used his palm as a saber again, and waved it toward the sky. Tiger soul. See cleaving. The world suddenly darkened. A huge dark red saber energy shot up into the sky. It broke through the layers of sword energy, and even split open the thick fog in the sky. At this moment, a huge airwave spread out, and the wild wind swept up like ocean waves. In the hurricane, Gongsun Shiyu's expression changed drastically. The unparalleled golden light tore apart the dark red saber energy that was almost black. At this moment, the old man, Fire Cloud Evil God, seemed to have a huge saber in his hand, and it let out a roar that sounded like a tiger roaring in the forest. His eyes were even more evil, and they turned dark red. Tiger Soul Saber. Gongsun Shiyu's eyes were filled with horror. Chiyo's 7 limits. You're Chiyo's descendant? However, Fire Cloud Evil God didn't seem to hear Gongsun Shiyu's exclamation. Pushed by the dark red aura, his body shot up into the air. The illusory demonic saber shadow in his palm suddenly solidified. Evil God. At this moment, Fire Cloud Evil God seemed to have turned into a real evil god. Landslide. Fire Cloud Evil God held the saber with both hands, and the demonic saber slashed down toward the ground. The destructive power swept out in all directions, and it didn't distinguish between friend and foe. Gongsun Shiyu was the first to bear the brunt of the most powerful attack of this horrifying saber aura. Gongsun Shiyu didn't have time to think. He took out the evil dragon bead, and a huge force gathered on his body from the ground. Then, a pitch-black aura invaded his Xianyuan war soul. The war soul seemed to roar and rush toward the horrifying force caused by the saber aura. Boom! The loud explosion was like thunder in the sky. The ground within dozens of kilometers trembled slightly because of this loud explosion, and the mountain top directly collapsed because of the expansion of the power. The tumbling boulders instantly swallowed up the people from both sides. The landslide made the mountain top disappear. At this moment, Fire Cloud Evil God was still standing in the air, and horrifying demonic aura gushed out crazily. At this moment, a figure rushed out from the rubble. It was another mysterious person wearing a hood, Mr. Blind. At this moment, Mr. Blind was standing on an ancient flying sword, and he quickly approached Fire Cloud Evil God. Fire Cloud Evil God instinctively slashed down with his saber. Mr. Blind took a deep breath, and the ancient flying sword under his feet instantly shot out, hitting the demonic saber. The ancient flying sword was instantly split apart by the demonic saber. However, Mr. Blind didn't want to fight head-on with his opponent. He only wanted to buy some time. At this moment, Mr. Blind flipped his palm, and there were 7 long needles between his fingers. Mr. Blind waved his hand, and the 7 long needles shot out, piercing into 7 different acupoints on Fire Cloud Evil God's body. The moment the 7 long needles pierced into Fire Cloud Evil God's body, the huge demonic aura suddenly retracted. Then, Fire Cloud Evil God's body shook, and the horrifying demonic aura was instantly expelled from his body. The dispersed demonic aura rushed toward Mr. Blind, pressing him down to the ground. Mr. Blind spat out a mouthful of blood. After landing on the ground, he immediately focused all his attention on his hearing. He could only hear the sound of landing slowly. Fire Cloud, Evil God, finally landed on the ground. He closed his eyes and slowly inhaled and exhaled. After a long while, he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. "Thanks, Mr. Blind." Fire Cloud, Evil God's face was slightly pale, and he had a helpless look on his face. "I originally didn't want to use Tiger Soul Saber, but I didn't expect that this guy from the Gongsun clan would summon Xianyuan Sword Shadow, which directly stimulated its ferocious nature." Mr. Blind clutched his chest and staggered to his feet. The Yellow Emperor and Chiyu were destined to live and die. Back then, when Chiyu fell, it naturally added a large amount of resentment to this peerless demonic saber. "You should avoid using this saber if you can." Fire Cloud, Evil God sighed, but didn't say anything. He looked around and saw that the mountain had been destroyed, but the Jade Dragon Pillar was still intact. In fact, the Jade Dragon Pillar was floating in midair. A huge pillar of light shot up into the sky. The person was beaten away, but this pillar was also erected. Fire Cloud, Evil God shook his head. "This mission can be considered a failure." Mr. Blind silently called back his ancient sword. However, there was a large gap on the ancient sword. It was caused by Tiger Soul Saber. "Let's first meet up with the other two teams," Mr. Blind said solemnly. "The sixth one has already appeared. I can calculate the location of the last one." In the thick fog, a figure moved quickly. Only after moving to a mountain forest did this figure stop. Gongsun Shiyu pressed his hand on the trunk of an ancient tree, and then spat out a mouthful of thick blood. "If not for this evil dragon bead increasing my Yellow Emperor bloodline," thinking back to that terrifying saber strike of Fire Cloud, Evil God, Gongsun Shiyu still had a feeling of fear and trepidation. He lost for the second time. The first time was at the hands of that blonde woman, and this time was at the hands of the successor of the Yellow Emperor's 1,000-year-old enemy, Chiyu. At this moment, a wisp of black smoke quietly emerged from the evil dragon bead and drilled into Gongsun Shiyu's palm. Gongsun Shiyu's eyes flashed with a hint of a demonic light, then returned to normal. Gongsun Shiyu clenched his teeth and slapped the ancient tree with his palm, instantly breaking it. Then, he staggered into the mountain forest. In a strange karst cave, a heavily injured black-clothed man with a bronze mask was lying below the altar. "Lord, fortunately, I did not disappoint you. The sixth Jade Dragon Pillar has been erected." On the altar, the man with the bronze mask nodded. "You've worked hard, you can go in as well." Below the altar, the furnace slowly opened. This heavily injured black-clothed man took off everything on his body and slowly walked into the furnace. The man with the bronze mask returned to the center of the altar and sat down cross-legged. "I didn't expect that Gongsun Shiyu would actually lose to the successor of Chiyu," the man with the bronze mask said in a low voice. "So that's how it is. No wonder I couldn't calculate your true strength, Fire Cloud, Evil God. It seems that Kelowna's #1 demonic saber helped you hide your secret. Amazing talent with endless potential, Fire Cloud, Evil God should stay." The man with the bronze mask slowly closed his eyes. This time, the passage opened for a bit longer, about 5 seconds. Chapter 1108. In the small bar, the resident singer was singing the song Black Rain. Many times, it was not strange to travel all over the country in order to dig for news, but in the end, nothing was found. This place was going to be evacuated. The 3 people of the newspaper office, who found nothing planned to experience the atmosphere of a foreign land this evening. In fact, they came to this small bar to indulge themselves a little. Most of the people in the bar were foreigners. Most of them were Renziling's colleagues. It seemed that some people were discussing whether they should quietly bypass the controlled road and sneak into the thick fog area. After all, the whole country was paying attention to this matter at this time. If anyone could get the first-hand information, they might really be able to reach the sky in a single bound. Not only the domestic colleagues, Rensselaer even found several foreigners. A large number of foreign media were actually on the way, or had been close to the thick fog area. Rensselaer even believed that the first to sneak into the controlled area was likely to be these foreign colleagues. For the first time, Rensselaer did not intend to rush into the thick fog area to find the truth. The reason was very simple. If something happened in her own territory, someone would take care of her. If something happened in this place, she would be doomed. What will happen to Luochio if I am dead? Who will pay the mortgage? So, cheers. Sister Rin, you and Yukiko stay here. I need to go to the bathroom. Lizzie stood up at this time. Rensselaer was a little tipsy. She just waved her hand and looked at the cup in front of her. Be careful. Don't let the roadside barbecue uncle take you away. Lizzie rolled her eyes. Even if she was a foodie, she still had integrity, okay? However, seeing that Rensselaer was really a little drunk, Lizzie quietly reminded Yukiko and then left. She did not go to the bathroom, but quietly slipped out of the bar in a blind spot. The road outside the town was a little deserted. After Lizzie came out, she took a detour and came to the back alley of the bar. She leaned against the wall of the alley and slowly unwrapped a lollipop. Then, she put the milk-flavored white candy into her mouth. Lizzie slowly turned the stick of the lollipop, and the sound of sucking could be heard. After a while, Lizzie looked into the depths of the alley. You've been following us for so long. Are you still not going to show yourself? In the depths of the alley, a tall figure slowly walked out, Wang Hu, who had lost an arm. He slowly walked to the front of Lizzie and sized her up without blinking. Lizzie had to look up to see Wang Hu's face clearly. She frowned and said, "Didn't I tell you not to follow me?" Wang Hu shook his head. To be honest, he himself couldn't think of a reason to tail her all the way. He simply felt that the petite girl was one of his own kind. In other words, this petite girl exuded something very familiar, although it was very weak. Wang Hu didn't speak, which made Lizzie frown again. "I'm telling you very seriously, Sister Rin is a human that I value very much. If you dare to do anything to her, be careful that I'll eat you." Lizzie opened her mouth and made a very fierce expression. Wang Hu shook his head. "I don't intend to hurt your friend. It's just that I don't know what to do next. There's something about you that makes me feel very familiar." Lizzie frowned and looked at this guy. She knew what Wang Hu was talking about. It was a trace of weak demon power that she deliberately released. Along the way, there were a lot of demons and ghosts. Lizzie continued to release her aura. The purpose was very simple. It was just to shock those little demons and ghosts who were not afraid of death, so that they would not trouble her. "You really can't remember anything? What happened in the past?" Lizzie looked at Wang Hu suspiciously. In this day and age, demons can also lose their memories? This guy, how much stimulation did he suffer that he actually forgot everything? Wang Hu still shook his head. Lizzie pondered for a while and said, "Well, even if you lost your memory, I have no obligation to take care of you. Besides, with your ability, even if no one takes care of you, you won't starve to death. What's your original form?" "Original form?" Wang Hu was stunned and asked curiously, "What's original form?" "I'm asking you." Lizzie rolled her eyes. The extent of this guy's memory loss is so bad that he can't even remember what his original form is? "I really can't remember." Wang Hu shook his head. "Can't remember?" Lizzie sneered at this time. "If you can't remember, what's the situation with the dead people inside? Wasn't it you who was hungry and looking for food?" Wang Hu shook his head. "It's not me. When I came, the guy inside was already dead." Lizzie stared at Wang Hu's expression until she felt that the other party's gaze was indeed quite calm. Then, she frowned and walked into the depths of the alley. She came here, on the one hand, she noticed the demon aura emitted by Wang Hu. On the other hand, it was because of the strong smell of blood in the air. When she approached and turned on the flashlight of her mobile phone, what she saw was a shriveled corpse that was abandoned on the ground. Wang Hu came behind Li Zi at this time. Li Zi looked back at Wang Hu, then squatted down and began to examine the corpse. All the blood has been sucked dry, and the essence has been sucked dry. Li Zi turned the corpse's neck around and saw a bloody bite wound. The corpse exuded a cold aura. There seemed to be another demon aura left in the air, and it was different from Wang Hu's. Which guy is so immoral to hunt so blatantly? Li Zi stood up, then raised her head and looked at the top of the alley. Puff! At this moment, a figure fell from above and smashed directly onto the ground, onto the corpse on the ground. It was also shriveled. Not only one. At this time, the corpses began to fall from above one after another. Li Zi took a few steps back, and the dried corpses on the ground had been stacked up to 5. At last, a black shadow fell down. Li Zi finally saw it clearly. A young man with a frosty face, and at this time, the young man was holding a young woman and biting the woman's neck. Blood flowed from the woman's neck. The woman's body twitched, and her face was distorted and frightened. The man with a frosty face threw the woman to the ground and looked over with a cold gaze. He even spat out a thick cold mist from his mouth. Are the monsters now so blatant when they eat? Li Zi felt the serious madness and killing intent of the frosty guy. She turned her palm and several sharp ice thorns were already between her fingers. Busybody! I don't mind eating one more. The frosty young man sneered at this time. Or two! This guy. Li Zi muttered. Could it be that he took too many drugs? Just when Li Zi was thinking about how to lead this guy away, at least not to make any noise in this place, the guy with a frosty face in front of her suddenly changed his expression. Huang Baifu? It turned out that at this time, Wang Hu took 2 steps forward, walked out of the shadow, and showed his face, and the frosty young man saw Wang Hu's real face at this time. Li Zi clearly saw the fear in the young man's eyes, and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, You know him? What did he call you? Wang Hu shook his head, stared at the blood-sucking young man in front of him, and frowned. You know who I am? The frosty young man was stunned, and looked at Wang Hu's appearance at this time with a strange expression. One arm was broken. The Wang Hu in front of him was no different from the white tiger young master he knew. But the strange thing was, if it was the white tiger young master he knew, he should not be so dull. Huang Baifu had always given the demons the impression of being overbearing and cruel in the demon world of Kelowna. Of course I know you, the young man said in a low voice. I'm afraid there are not many demons in the world who do not know you. Young Master Huang, I just ate a few humans here, and I did not offend you and your friend's plan. Goodbye. As he spoke, the frosty young man slowly retreated. It was not worthwhile for him to have any conflict with this white tiger young master in front of him. When he was in the Penglai treasure vault, in order to survive, he did not hesitate to eat the corpses of many Dao demons, and there was no lack of white tiger corpses among them. This was a big taboo, and if it was exposed, he would probably be hunted down by both the Dao and demon world. However, Huang Baifu did not attack at the beginning, probably because he did not know. Wait. But Wang Hu forgot what happened in the past. This was not a good state, so it was rare for him to meet a guy who recognized him, so how could he let him go easily? Wang Hu instantly rushed out, waved his hand, and directly grabbed the young man's shoulder. This action shocked the young man, and his inference that Huang Baifu might not know that he had eaten the white tiger corpses was instantly overturned. In a moment of desperation, the young man directly punched Wang Hu's chest. This punch seemed to explode with all his potential in order to survive. The cold air attached to the fist instantly froze the entire alley. As for Wang Hu, he was directly sent flying by the young man's fist and fell to the ground. Wang Hu crawled up, but there was blood at the corner of his mouth. This. The young man looked at Huang Baifu, who had blood at the corner of his mouth, in disbelief, and was extremely shocked. If he told others that he had sent the white tiger young master flying with one punch, no one would believe it. Although he had lost the flame power of the vermilion bird race ever since he woke up, there was a power that was even stronger than the flame power in his body. As if he had been reborn, he felt that he was much stronger than before. However, it was obvious that this strength was still not enough when facing the white tiger young master. How did Huang Baifu beat up the previous Azure Dragon Clan leader to the point that he could not take care of himself? It was because of his extremely strong strength. Why are you so weak? I just want to ask you some things. Wang Hu took the punch head-on and felt very uncomfortable, but at this time, he could not raise his fist. For some reason, Wang Hu felt that he was very resistant to raising his fist. I can't remember what happened in the past. What did you call me just now? Do you recognize me? You. The young man opened his mouth in surprise. He thought for a while. The real Huang Baifu would not be so polite. Could it be that this guy with a broken arm in front of him was just very similar to Huang Baifu, but was actually a different person? Indeed, the young man did not feel Huang Baifu's domineering aura from Wang Hu. If the Huang Baifu he saw at the Kuanping Mountain Villa to participate in the Penglai conference was a general at the front line, then the one in front of him was like a deserter. Ever since he woke up, his temperament had changed greatly. At this moment, he gritted his teeth and suddenly punched at Wang Hu again. At this time, Wang Hu's arm instinctively retracted, and he even clenched his fist. Wang Hu's gaze instantly became very sharp. But when the young man's fist blasted in front of him, Wang Hu's eyes showed a touch of pain in an instant, and at the same time, his fist was even loosened. The young man's fist bombarded Wang Hu's face fiercely. This punch broke Wang Hu's nose abruptly. He actually did not fight back. When the young man saw this, the fierceness in his body was like a detonated explosive. His fists were like a storm, bombarding Wang Hu's body, causing Wang Hu to vomit blood. Seeing this at this time, Li Zi couldn't bear it in her heart. The icicles between her fingers instantly shot out. The young man snorted coldly, waved his hand, and directly smashed a few icicles, but Li Zi just wanted to divert the opponent's attention. Li Zi's palm waved toward Wang Hu, and a white silk shot out from her sleeve. It directly wrapped around Wang Hu's body and pulled him directly to her side. Maybe it was because she had been with Ren Xiling for a long time. Li Zi scolded at this time. Idiot! Are you a punching bag? You are obviously clenching your fists, why don't you fight? I don't know. I feel a very disgusted feeling when I clench my fists. Wang Hu shook his head. Maybe I don't like to fight. Li Zi knocked Wang Hu's head hard at this time. You idiot! If you don't clench your fists, you won't know how to fight. Use your palms to slap. Palms? Wang Hu was stunned. At this time, the young man obviously did not intend to give Li Zi and Wang Hu a chance to continue talking. He needed a lot of flesh and blood. Only by swallowing a lot of flesh and blood could he suppress the cold in his body and improve his strength at the same time, and the two monsters in front of him were obviously very good food. Whether you are Huang Baifu or not, you will die. At this time, the young man showed a crazy smile at this time, rushed forward again. At this time, Wang Hu suddenly trembled, only to see that at the young man's body at this time, the speed was so fast that it could not be seen. At least, Li Zi only saw a shadow flash by. Boom! The young man's body was instantly smashed to the ground. The cement floor cracked in an instant. Chapter 1109. Li Zi took a closer look. This guy who seemed to have taken drugs didn't move after being slapped to the ground by Wang Hu. It didn't seem to be a trap. But even if it was a trap, it would be difficult. After this slap, this guy's head directly burst into a pile of bones and flesh, and even his brain juice burst out. Moreover, it was difficult to get his body out of the ground. And looking at the situation, he was completely dead. In Li Zi's demon life, she had seen more cruel deaths than this, so at this time, she just glanced at it and didn't pay attention. Wang Hu looked at his palm at this time and was stunned. He didn't react until Li Zi pushed him. Is it your first time killing a demon? Li Zi blinked and asked. Wang Hu shook his head and replied seriously, You're right. If I don't clench my fist, I won't have the feeling of not wanting to fight. Li Zi opened her mouth and the lollipop in her mouth almost fell out. She quickly held it and then scratched the back of her ear. Well, maybe you were a very powerful demon before you lost your memory. But this is good, at least you have the ability to protect yourself. Wang Hu nodded subconsciously. Li Zi said, In short, if you want to mingle in the human world, you have to be careful. Don't be like this guy, eating people indiscriminately. I heard that there is a bureau in this country, which is responsible for dealing with these unruly demons. Bureau? Wang Hu frowned. He seemed to have heard of it somewhere. Li Zi shrugged and said, Probably like the police in the human world? Anyway, I haven't touched it. I haven't been in this country for long. Li Zi raised her snow-white teeth and gritted, I don't eat people, I'm law-abiding. Wang Hu smiled. Well, you play by yourself, I'm leaving. You? Where are you going? Li Zi frowned and said, I have no obligation to take care of you, and you don't need to be taken care of, right? Your demon power quality is very high, I'm afraid you are much more powerful than me. So, don't follow us, I don't want to get into trouble. If you really have nothing to do, you can deal with the corpses here. Those dead humans should have some money on them. Go and pick it up. It's a waste not to pick it up anyway. After saying that, Li Zi walked out of the alley. But after a few steps, she suddenly turned around. Wang Hu subconsciously followed him and took a few steps forward. Li Zi opened her mouth fiercely and gritted her teeth again. I'll turn you into a popsicle. A gust of cold air blew to Wang Hu's side, freezing his legs into ice. Li Zi pointed at Wang Hu and said, You really don't want to follow us. Wang Hu watched as the petite figure walked out of the alley. Only then did he look around at a loss. He raised his leg, and the frozen ice beneath his feet instantly shattered. He looked back at the corpses and remembered Li Zi's words. He walked over and searched them. He took out the money from the wallet and stuffed it into his trouser pocket. In the end, Wang Hu took a look at the young man who had sunk into the ground and whose head had already exploded. He shook his head and strode out of the alley. Disposing of the corpse was impossible. It would never be possible. In the pitch-black alley, the body of the motionless youth on the ground suddenly burst into flames. A beam of azure-blue flames burned his body into ashes. The blue flame became more and more vigorous. In the middle of the flame, a body slowly condensed. After an unknown amount of time, he slowly stood up. His naked body. Yen Lu looked at his hands blankly and then frowned. Not long after, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. This guy with a broken arm was definitely Huang Baifu. However, he was clearly dead. Legend has it that the vermilion bird can be reborn from fire. Could it be that I can too? But Yen Lu quickly rejected this idea. Being reborn from fire was a transformation of life. The vermilion bird that was reborn from fire could obtain more power. But this time, he was obviously much weaker. He was much weaker than when he had not lost his flame power and was suffering from a terminal illness. Moreover, Yen Lu vaguely felt that this rebirth from fire was not limitless. There was a limit to it. It made me a lot more clear-headed. Yen Lu lowered his head. At this time, his mind was abnormally clear. He recalled everything that had happened during this period of time and felt that it was more and more inconceivable, especially when he unscrupulously hunted in the town. Yen Lu took a deep breath and looked at the dead people. After thinking for a while, he took off the clothes from the dead people and put them on. He had to leave this place. If Huang Baifu found out that he was not dead and wanted to kill him a few more times, he was afraid that he would not be able to rebirth from fire. I still need to have a lot of power. This slap woke him up, but at the same time, it made him feel a thirst for power. From today onwards, Yen Lu is dead. The reborn me is called Mo Lee. When Lizzie returned to Leisure Bar, the place became lively. But to Lizzie's surprise, it seemed reasonable that this lively scene was centered around Renziling and Yukiko. At this time, Renziling and Yukiko were blocked by several men in the corner. Next to Yukiko, there was a young man who was covering his forehead with a towel. It seemed that he was bleeding. There was a pile of glass fragments and broken wine bottles on the ground. Renziling was arguing with several men who blocked her way. Subeditor Ren's face was redder than Lizzie's face before she left. It was unknown whether it was because of the wine or because of her anger. Sister Ren. Lizzie pushed away the onlookers and came to Renziling. She frowned and asked, "What happened?" Renziling snorted. "These stinky men were drunk and took advantage of Yukiko. What good could it be?" Riko looked at the young man on the ground who was being supported by Yukiko and showed a questioning expression. The answer she got was that the young man acted bravely, but before he could say a few words, he was shot in the head by the drunkards with a bottle of wine. This wasn't anything new. Similar things were happening all the time in this kind of place. Medical expenses. And apologize. Otherwise I will call the police. After explaining to Lizzie quickly, Renziling shouted at those men, but these guys were probably drunk. At this time, their faces were flushed. How could they listen to her? One of them sneered, "Mind your own business. Otherwise, I will beat you too." F***ck. Renziling cursed in a low voice and directly picked up the phone. At this time, seeing Renziling dialing Renziling's phone, those drunk guys seemed to sober up a little. The fiercest one directly reached out to grab Renziling's phone. B***tch. Do you know who I am? The man looked fierce. Are you tired of living? Don't you want to go out? It was unknown whether this person was a local tyrant. Seeing him pick up a beer bottle and smash it into pieces, the onlookers all stopped in their tracks. Some people wanted to find the boss to mediate the matter, but they found that the boss was already drunk and unconscious. What are you looking at? The man holding the bottle at this time pointed the bottle at the onlookers, which scared them and made them retreat. Then he pointed the broken bottle at Renziling. B***tch. Give me the phone. Renziling was so angry that her face turned red and white at this time. But she was stubborn and had drunk a lot before. How could she calm down at this time? Subeditor Ren directly ignored the man's threat at this time. The moment the phone was dialed, she began to report the situation directly. The man holding the bottle was furious at this time. He was originally a gangster nearby and always caused trouble. At this time, the drink emboldened him and he became fierce. B***tch. Seeing this guy really holding the bottle and poking at Renziling, Lizzie's pupils shrank instantly. Her eyes flashed with killing intent, and at the same time, an ice thorn had been condensed in her palm. But at the moment when Lizzie was about to shoot out the ice thorn, she stopped. Bang! With a bang, the drunkard who was holding the bottle screamed. Karma came quickly. At this moment, someone was behind him, holding a bottle and smashing it on the back of his head. This scene shocked everyone in Leisure Bar, thinking that there was really no way to end this. It was a man in his 30s, with a square stubble face, wearing a black jacket and sharp eyes. B***tch. Who dares to hit me? At this time, the drunk man touched the back of his head at this time. Seeing that his palm was red, he suddenly became bold. Beat this bastard for me? At this time, several gangsters rushed at the man in the jacket. The man in the jacket had an indifferent look in his eyes. He snorted coldly and kicked out his leg. The first hoodlum who pounced on him was directly kicked and fell onto the table behind him. He crushed the wooden table to the ground and could not stand up again. At this time, the man in the jacket grabbed another gangster's hair and pulled him down. At the same time, he raised his knee and hit the gangster's face fiercely. The gangster's face was hit, and even the bridge of his nose was directly knocked crooked. His nose was bleeding, and he directly fainted. The man in the jacket made a simple move and let go of the two hoodlums. Immediately, the rest of the hoodlums were scared out of their wits. They sobered up quite a bit and thought of retreating. However, the man in the jacket didn't intend to stop. He directly rushed out, punched and kicked, and in less than 10 seconds, he beat the few men to the ground. After beating the group of drunkards to the ground and unable to get up, the man in the jacket slowly sighed. He looked around and his eyes were still sharp. Seeing this, everyone kept quiet out of fear and lowered their heads one after another. At this time, the man in the jacket said in a deep voice, "Who is the boss?" At this time, a middle-aged man trembled and walked out. He said that he was drunk and unconscious, but he didn't know when he woke up. The boss came in front of the man in the jacket and carefully said, I am. Get rid of these people." The man in the jacket coldly said, "Let the police handle it. Don't let me know that you secretly let them go, or I'll tear down your bar." "Yes, yes, yes." The bar owner quickly nodded in agreement. The man in the jacket's eyes were too sharp. Seeing clearly, the bar owner didn't dare to raise his head. At this time, the man in the jacket coldly snorted and walked toward Ren Xiling. And Auntie Ren, after seeing the man in the jacket appear, her eyes lit up. "You're not injured, right?" The man in the jacket came to Ren Xiling at this time. After taking a deep breath, he slowly asked. Ren Xiling shook her head. "What can happen to me?" At this time, the man in the jacket looked around. After confirming that Ren Xiling was really not injured, he nodded. But soon he sighed with a helpless look. "I say, sister-in-law, why didn't you stay at old Ma's place? Why did you come here?" "Sister-in-law, sister-in-law?" Li Zi opened her mouth at this time. This man who appeared very manly called Sister Ren sister-in-law? "Ah, I haven't seen you for a long time, you've become stronger. Dumbo." At this time, Ren Xiling reached out and patted the man's chest at this time. She clicked her tongue in wonder. "Tut tut, this body, your wife is really lucky." The man in the jacket suddenly became gloomy and then sighed. At this time, Ren Xiling put her hand on the shoulder of the man in the jacket and looked at Li Zi. "This guy is my husband's former brother, called Dumbo. No, he's called Ling Feng. He's in the army. He's a major." Li Zi's lips moved, but in the end, she did not say anything. But in her heart, she had a strange thought. Sister Ren's husband has a brother outside. After this incident, naturally, they could not stay in Leisure Bar. After calling for an ambulance and taking the brave young man away, Ling Feng and Ren Xiling returned to the hotel where Ren Xiling was staying with Ren Xiling and the others. "Dumbo, why are you here?" Ren Xiling asked curiously. "Weren't you transferred to the capital?" "Dumbo," Ling Feng said with a dark expression, "you know the situation here a little, right? The local police and military are not enough manpower, so I was transferred here as reinforcements. I was planning to go out for a walk tonight, but I didn't expect to meet you." Li Zi poured some hot tea for Ren Xiling to relieve her hangover. After Ren Xiling took a sip, she held the cup to warm her hands. "Is the situation here really that bad?" "Dumbo, what's with the thick fog?" Ling Feng said seriously. "Sister-in-law, don't ask me about it. I don't know either, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. You know the military's rules." "Stingy." Ren Xiling glared at him. Ling Feng was unmoved and said flatly, "It's too dangerous for you to stay here. I'll have someone send you away tomorrow. The evacuation of this town will be completed tomorrow, you can't stay here." Seeing that Ling Feng did not care about her feelings at all, Ren Xiling had no choice but to nod. This guy was different from old Ma, he would not fall for her shamelessness at all. "All right, the first quarterly award after the new year is gone." Ren Xiling could not help but pull a long face. Ling Feng frowned. "Is there something you need money for?" Ren Xiling smiled casually and said, "Actually, it's not that. I just want to earn more to feel safer." Ling Feng shook his head. He knew that this woman did not want to say anything, no one would be able to pry open her mouth. Ling Feng's gaze softened. It's the new year and you came out like this. Where's Luocio? Don't say anything. He ran away with a woman. Ren Xiling said angrily, Men? Indeed, he forgot about his mother when he got a wife. I raised him for nothing. Oh? Little Luocio has a girlfriend? Ling Feng, who seemed to be more interested in this topic, changed his sitting position. This kid has been a talent since he was young. I still remember when brother Luoqi brought him to my camp to train when he was young. This kid got lost in the forest and stayed there the whole night, but he was fine the next day. He wasn't scared at all. Of course. Ren Xiling raised her nose. He's my son. Chapter 11:10. Ling Feng chatted with Ren Xiling in the hotel until late at night. He even bought 3 bottles of expensive tap water to boil water for tea. After that, Ling Feng got into a military jeep and left. The person who came to pick up Ling Feng was a young man in military uniform. He also had an extraordinary aura. After that, Yukiko said she was tired and went back to her room early to rest. In fact, Yukiko wanted to go back to her room and concentrate on digesting what she had heard tonight. Yukiko never forgot the purpose of her visit. Although Song Ying had not given her any new instructions, Yukiko still tried her best to collect as much information about Master Chiu as possible. Yukiko had already figured out Ren Xiling's character and characteristic. She had also investigated Luocio's family background. Yes, that was what Yukiko thought. However, after tonight, Yukiko found that things were not that simple. Because Ling Feng appeared. He was a man who served as a major in the Beijing military region of Hua Nation. He was a good friend and brother of Luocio's father. From his conversation with Ren Xiling, it was not difficult for Yukiko to find that Ling Feng seemed to be quite concerned about his brother's widow and child. In addition, the conversation between Ling Feng and Ren Xiling also involved some people that Yukiko did not know. For example, Yi Yan, a man who worked in Interpol. Another example was the woman named Ali, who seemed to be working in an important department in Hua Nation. In addition to the above, several other names appeared one after another. Yukiko thought that Master Chiu was just an ordinary policeman's family. At most, he had an uncle like Ma Haud, so he had some connections. However, she did not expect that this single-parent family seemed to have a terrifying network of connections. Young Master Chiu's father, was he really just an ordinary policeman? Yukiko has been here for a long time. Although she only saw Master Chiu a few times in the Song family in South America, at this time, she became more and more curious about this Master Chiu. At this time, Yukiko was sitting in front of the bed, looking at the satellite phone in her hand. This phone was used to contact Song Ying. Yukiko hadn't reported her work for a long time. Song Ying said some time ago that she temporarily stopped contacting her. We should report this matter to Mississippi, Yukiko thought to herself. This was also a good enough reason for her to hear Song Ying's voice. The call was quickly connected, and Yukiko finally heard Song Ying's voice as she wished. Ling Feng? Song Ying was stunned. At this time, she subconsciously wrapped the down jacket on her body. When she spoke, a white mist came out of her mouth, almost freezing into ice shards. Song Ying looked at the huge area of thick fog in front of her absent-mindedly. Just half a day ago, the Song family evacuated from the thick fog. They were brought out by 2 people in black suits who claimed that they were here to rescue them. These 2 people also brought a message from Mr. Blind. It seemed that Mr. Blind also knew that Song Tianyu was trapped in the thick fog, so he used some means to send the 2 men in black suits. After the 2 men sent the Song family out, they immediately left. The Song family was temporarily settled in a nearby town. However, the thick fog had begun to spread, so the town would probably be evacuated in 2 days. After a discussion, the 3 members of the Song family decided to observe the situation first. After all, they had lost contact with some of the Song family soldiers because of the thick fog. At present, Uncle Wu and Song Haoran were trying to find a way to contact each other. After all, the Song family's foundation was still in South America. It was impossible for them to stay in China for a long time. Miss, I was just thinking about something. Please continue. Song Ying came back to her senses and listened to Yukiko's report absent-mindedly. The matter about Yukiko's investigation happened a long time ago. Later, Song Ying could not find any reason to ask Yukiko to come back. Then she returned to China, so this matter was delayed. Since the ice cellar incident, Song Ying's mind had changed a lot. She had thrown her guard against Luo Qiu out of the window. Instead, she was faintly worried that Kiko would come back and accidentally leak the information she had asked her to investigate. Then, unluckily, it was passed to Luo Qiu's ears. "Yukiko, you did a good job," Song Ying suddenly said, "but this is not enough. I still need to know more. Your next goal is very clear. That is to find out who is in this network as much as possible. This is very important to our Song family, do you understand?" "Miss, I understand. Thank you for your hard work," Song Ying said softly at this time. "I still have something to do here. If you have any new situation, report to me. Oh, by the way, since Miss Rin is nearby, you'd better protect her as much as possible. No matter what, this lady is the daughter-in-law of our Song family." "Understood." After finally getting rid of Yukiko, Song Ying yawned and lay on the bed. During this period of time, she had been trapped in the Song family's ancestral home. Everyone was in a state of panic, so she didn't have a good rest. At this time, she finally walked out of the thick fog area and lay down. She was physically and mentally exhausted. "That's not right. Didn't Luochio say that he went back to celebrate the New Year? Why did his stepmother come here?" Suddenly, Song Ying felt sleepy like a tide. Her eyelids became heavier and heavier. The moment she finally closed her eyes, a desolate and dilapidated city suddenly flashed by. In this ruined city, there were a large number of rotting corpses wandering around. This was the best hotel in the town. But at this time, the hotel was very empty. Most of the guests had left early. Late at night, a room in the hotel was still lit. "It's still spreading. It's like a giant beast, swallowing everything." Song Hauran looked at the thick fog outside the town with the night vision goggles. In the battle that year, the thick fog of the Four Seasons glazed book covered thousands of miles. It's not surprising that it's still spreading now. Behind Song Hauran, a beautiful female voice slowly sounded. It was Princess Chuyang's voice. The princess had changed into a set of modern clothes. As for her hair, it was simply draped over her shoulders without any care. Even so, her hair was as smooth as silk. "You mean, its final range can reach over 500 kilometers? Song Hauran turned around and looked at Princess Chuyang's face. There was still a trace of paleness. During this period of time, under Song Hauran's control, Princess Chuyang always kept a certain distance from Marquis Zhu. Even so, the two of them were not at daggers drawn like they were at the beginning, and were able to converse normally. Song Hauran gave Princess Chuyang a pad. After leaving the thick fog, electronic devices could be used again. It was not impossible to bring a teacher with her to teach Princess Chuyang modern knowledge, but considering the current situation, it was not very convenient. However, this princess's ability to accept things was quite good. She was also very intelligent and could infer many things from one example. In a short period of time, she had actually accepted this modern society. It depends on the person who uses the Four Seasons glazed book, and whether their own strength can bring out the full power of this treasure. Princess Chuyang did not raise her head. Right now, her eyes were focused on the map of Huaxia. She said casually, however, "It's not like there's no way to break the Four Seasons glazed book." "Oh." Song Hauran's interest was immediately piqued. "Didn't you say that unless the caster dies or stops, it won't stop?" Princess Chuyang raised her head and looked at Song Hauran. She said, "The way to break the Four Seasons glazed book refers to how to move in the fog, not how to break the fog. I've already said that Dynasty used the Four Seasons glazed book to repel the invasion of the exotic beasts. Once this treasure is activated, it doesn't distinguish between friend and foe. If there's no way to move safely, how can Dynasty's army kill the exotic beasts in the fog? Song Hauran frowned. He did not ask why this Princess Chu Yang did not say anything in the beginning. After all, the two of them did not have a good relationship to begin with, and this princess had even less reason to care about his life and death. Or rather, if something happened to him, the Sueho pearl could directly return to her hands, right? There were still quite a few Song family warriors who were trapped inside. If he could obtain a way to only move in the fog, it would be very beneficial for him to contact them. How can Princess teach me? Everything was driven by benefits. Song Hauran understood this very well, so he went straight to the point. Princess Chu Yang sized up Song Hauran with a meaningful look. Only then did she slowly say, "Although I have already come out, my resting place has been destroyed. I must investigate this matter thoroughly." Song Hauran was also a clever person. At this moment, he smiled and said, "Princess Chu Yang has just woken up in the modern world and is not familiar with many things. You need someone to serve you, right?" Princess Chu Yang looked at Song Hauran without saying anything. Young Master Song chuckled at this moment. "Your method of breaking the fog is indeed more effective in helping me find my lost subordinate. However, even without this method, I believe that my subordinates will be able to find a way out. It's only a matter of time. I don't think it's worthwhile for me to help Princess because of this." Princess Chu Yang suddenly said, "Song Hauran, you want to obtain power, right?" Song Hauran said casually, "Why do you say that?" Princess Chu Yang said indifferently, "I see that you often secretly read an ancient book. I'm afraid it's a kind of cultivation method. It's just that you can't understand it." "You can understand it?" Song Hauran narrowed his eyes. Princess Chu Yang said indifferently, "Try it and you'll know." Song Hauran thought for a while, but still tossed the ancient book that came from the mysterious bronze masked man to Princess Chu Yang. He wasn't afraid that she would destroy it. He had already memorized the contents of the book without missing a single detail. The princess picked it up expressionlessly and casually flipped through it. She read for more than 2 hours. Song Hauran could see some astonishment on Princess Chu Yang's face. She also gradually became focused from her initial indifference. She probably lost track of time because of this. But young Master Song's patience had always been very good. He just watched the princess read for more than 2 hours. Finally, Princess Chu Yang said, "Although I don't know who wrote this book, it is indeed a very talented person. This book does indeed record a kind of cultivation method, and it originates from the imperial dynasty. However, this person made some changes to the method, and it advanced a step further, becoming a wonderful method." "You're saying that the cultivation method in this book originates from the Qin dynasty?" Song Hauran opened his mouth in astonishment. Princess Chu Yang said matter-of-factly, "What's so strange about it? Back then, the demon race of the world was in trouble, and there was even the evil path causing mischief. The world was in chaos. If our great Qin dynasty didn't have the power to resist, how could we suppress the world? This method is called Sky Floating Pagoda. It was originally a method that the imperial dynasty bestowed to those who performed meritorious deeds. Among the many methods of the imperial dynasty, it is also very rare. Now that it has been modified by someone, its power has advanced a step further. You're quite lucky to be able to obtain this book. Princess, you can give me some pointers." Song Hauran smiled. "I've never lacked manpower, material resources, and financial resources. I'll teach you the beginning of the qi circulation method." Princess Chu Yang said calmly, "I'll only say it once." "Alright, I'll record it first." Song Hauran tapped on his phone and started to scroll. Princess Chu Yang was speechless. The first person to come out was Ghost Baby, followed by Chi Chi Kamaya, followed by Long Shiruo and the rest. It was night time, and the exit was still connected to the back of the granary. However, after Long Shirua and the rest came out, they couldn't help but feel a little strange. Because there were many tents near the exit, but there was no one there. Ghost Baby immediately checked around. Not long ago, there should be quite a few people here. Then, for some unknown reason, they left. Furthermore, they should have left in a hurry. I'm afraid it's because of that. Long Shirua frowned and looked up. After coming out of the Penglai treasure house, Long Shirua's expression had been very bad. At this time, after seeing the huge thick fog in front of them, she looked even worse. This is... Chichi Kamaya opened his mouth and frowned. He seemed to have thought of something and blurted out, "The Four Seasons glazed book? Who activated this thing? Who else?" Long Shirua suddenly sneered. "Chichi Kamaya, did you forget who came to visit me?" "You mean Gongsun Shiyu?" Chichi Kamaya's face darkened. Xianyuan Palace was divided into Qian and Kuan divisions. Kuan division was made up of the monsters who were suppressed by Xianyuan Palace, while Qian division was made up of the descendants of the Gongsun clan. Moreover, Xianyuan Palace's treasure house had always been guarded by Qian division. If there was anyone who could easily take out the rare treasures in the treasure house, it was naturally the Gongsun clan of Qian division. "What are you talking about? Gongsun what?" Su Zijuan, who had just come out, frowned at this time. "Who else could it be? The poor child that you ran away from." Long Shirua shrugged her shoulders. Chapter 11:11. But soon, one person came back from the temporarily moved camp, a logistics staff of the administration. It turned out that he had just gone out to solve some physiological problems during this time, so he missed the appearance of Long Shirua and her team. This logistics staff didn't know Chichi Kamaya and others, but he could recognize Xiao Xingma among them. Xiao Xingma was seriously injured and had not woken up at the moment. "I stayed here to convey information to the seniors who came back. My name is..." "No need for a name." Chichi Kamaya shook his head. "Just tell me what happened. Here's the thing." So, the logistics staff spoke with a sad face and quickly explained the cause and effect of the matter. It turned out that the operation to stop the 6th Jade Dragon Pillar had ended in failure. The current situation was unprecedentedly tense, so the people who had stayed behind, including the people from the agency's scientific research class, were all transferred to the thick fog area. There was only one purpose. That was to find the hiding place of the dangerous people led by the bronze-masked man as soon as possible. They must strike first and never let the 7th Jade Dragon Pillar be erected. Listening to the logistics staff, Long Shirua didn't think that nearly half a month had passed in the outside world in the short time they entered the Penglai treasure house. Moreover, this time it seemed that even the Qian battalion of the Xianyuan Palace was involved. Su Zijuan's face was almost dark. It was still unknown why the princess of the Xianyuan royal family ran away from home, but judging from her look at this time, she probably still cared about the reputation of the Xianyuan Palace. The current situation was serious, and everyone subconsciously looked at Long Shirua at this time. Long Shirua lowered her head and pondered. Although she was unwilling to admit it, judging from the behavior of the profiteer in the Penglai treasure house, the remaining ones that had not been removed should not be dangerous. Maybe they would come out soon. And judging from the previous situation, there should be few left that had not been removed. Although Long Shirua was quite concerned about what happened after the Penglai treasure house, the passage was one way. Even she had no way to enter the Penglai treasure house again in a short time. In that case, the more important thing now was clearly the matter of the 71st generation Tian Xian's plot. She knew more than anyone else what the Jade Dragon Pillar was. She also knew what it meant for the dragon bloodline to be drawn out of the Jade Dragon Pillar. "Can't you stop stirring up trouble?" Long Shirua scolded impatiently. "All of you are so bored." "Lord Long?" Chichi Kamaya asked in a low voice. At this moment, Long Shirua only said, "Chichi Kamaya, Concoct a medicine for me to recover my vitality as soon as possible. The sooner the better. Chichikamaya had already understood Long Shirua's plan. He quickly nodded and ordered Ghost Child to find the necessary herbs. Although the Xianyuan Palace did not appear in the world easily, there were many hidden properties of the Xianyuan Palace in the secular world. Otherwise, how could the Xianyuan Palace's Qiankuan and Qiankuan divisions be self-sufficient by farming? Coming out for activities also required funds. It had to be decent. Wait, you haven't explained to me why you become like this. Su Zijuan went straight to Long Shirua, looking down at her and exclaiming in her heart. How many years had it been since she looked down at this old woman like this? God really opened his eyes this time. Who asked you to laugh at me for being underdeveloped? Let's talk while walking. Long Shirua didn't bicker with Su Zijuan for the first time. She said with a serious face, after all, this matter involves the internal affairs of the Xianyuan Palace. No matter how willful you are, you'd better stop before going too far. Su Zijuan snorted but didn't continue to ask. Then, Long Shirua soon ordered them to split into two groups. Chichikamaya took Ghost Baby to make medicine and heal Xiaoshengma. Long Shirua, Su Zijuan and Jessica went into the thick fog to check the situation. As for the meeting place, it was the original villa. The thick fog was strange. It covered the sky and interfered with all electronic facilities. However, it couldn't stop these guys. At most, it only caused some small trouble. The logistics staff of the administration was left behind to explain the situation to those who might return from the passage. Before entering the thick fog, Long Shirua suddenly stopped Su Zijuan. Did you buy something from that profiteer? Why? Do you want to check where your child's pocket money goes? Su Zijuan raised her eyebrows and retorted, but it's okay if you're a parent. But after all, you're not a parent, right? Master Long, I'm not in the mood to play with you here. Zijuan, tell me. Su Zijuan was silent for a moment and said indifferently, I have my own plans. As I said, since you're not a parent, you have no right to control me. Since Princess Shirua has become the Shinryu, she has nothing to do with the Xianyuan royal family. I'm with you because it involves Qianbu of Xianyuan Palace. That's all. What does this mortal world have to do with me? I, Su Zijuan, am no longer a human since the day I became a Ba. With that, Su Zijuan walked directly into the thick fog. In the thick fog, everything became dead silent. Everyone was gone and the building was empty. Only the occasional animal cry could be heard. On the platform of the station, the thick fog covered the entire track. At this moment, a white light flashed on the platform and then a figure appeared. Gong Sun Wua. Gong Sun Wua looked around and suddenly frowned. He didn't move and just waited for some time. And Gong Fanqing also appeared by his side after 40 minutes. Wua, why did you leave in such a hurry? What did you encounter in Penglai Palace? Gong Fanqing frowned and looked at her arm. She didn't know when there was a tear on her sleeve, and there was even a faint blood stain on her snow-white skin. At the moment when she left, Qin Shuyu had made a slash with her sword. This sword strike had actually injured her. I met a guy who could use the martial arts of Xianyuan Palace, but I'm sure that this man doesn't have any Gongsun family bloodline in him. Gongsun Wua's face darkened. This man has cultivated the same martial arts as me, but his level is higher than mine. I couldn't even make a single punch in front of him. Gong Fanqing opened her mouth in surprise and looked at Gongsun Wua, who was shocked and had a gloomy face. She and Gongsun Wua were in the same era and had almost witnessed the resentment between this man and Xianyuan Palace. She was very clear about how powerful this man was and how arrogant he was. It was harder to make Gongsun Wua admit that he was not as good as others. In her impression, only Tai Bai jinxing could make Gongsun Wua lose his temper. But now there was one more? I didn't expect that the strong ones would appear one after another. Gong Fanqing now recalled the things in the square outside Penglai Palace. such as Huang Baifu, who made a terrible punch, although this punch had a taste. Not only that, there was also the mysterious Taisetsu and the man and woman beside Taisetsu. Gong Fanqing couldn't see through them. Although she provoked Qin Qiu at the beginning to cover for Gong Sunhua, she had been secretly observing everyone in the square. Let's not talk about Huang Baifu and Baijie first. In this Penglai treasure house, the strong ones appeared one after another. Gong Sunhua frowned. Jiang's said that 500 years had passed in the outside world. I'm afraid it's true. The outside world is not the place we are familiar with. Gong Fanqing looked around and nodded silently. The jade slip in her and Gong Sunhua's hands was a tool to leave the Penglai treasure house, but it could only be used once. When the white jade slip was crushed, she would return to the place before she entered the Penglai treasure house. Gong Fanqing remembered that she entered from a secret valley, but when she came out, she didn't know what was in front of her. Although in the Penglai treasure house, when Jiang's said that 500 years had passed, the reaction of the two was quite strange. However, when they really appeared in this modern world, a strange feeling of being out of place came along with it. What's wrong with the heavenly axiom? I even have a feeling that I'm being watched all the time. It's really changing. Gong Fanqing sighed and suddenly said, now 500 years have passed. I don't know if His Excellency already knew that the time in the treasure house was not equal to the time in the outside world when he let us enter the treasure house. Our mission this time is considered a failure. Gong Sunhua also sighed. We have to find His Excellency as soon as possible. I vaguely feel His Excellency's aura nearby. While the two were talking, the sound of rapid footsteps suddenly came from the platform. Someone shouted from afar, the one in front, hurry up, don't get lost. We have to start to cross the thick fog and leave. It was the rescue team that was sent from the outside world. In the thick fog area, they were constantly searching for people. A soldier. Gong Sunhua and Gong Fanqing looked at each other at this time. Gong Sunhua quickly stretched out his hand and grabbed in the air. A figure screamed in horror and was directly sucked into Gong Sunhua's hand from the thick fog. The soldier was very frightened at this moment. But Gong Sunhua didn't care. He stretched out his hand and directly grabbed the soldier's head, saying indifferently, "What have you experienced in the past 500 years? I want to know." On the platform, the soldier's scream gradually weakened. Soon after, when the rest of the soldiers of the rescue team found the soldier, they found that he was dead and there was no one around. Since Long Shiruo and the others left, the logistics personnel who didn't have time to remember to say his name continued to wait in boredom. He thought that he might have to wait for a long time this time. Unexpectedly, when he planned to take a nap, the mysterious passage appeared in front of him again. In the passageway, a youth of about 17 or 18 years of age slowly walked out. Immediately after, behind this youth, another youth who was even younger also walked out. Mo Xiaofei and Zhuifeng. After these two people came out, the passage disappeared again. According to the previous experience, those who came out of the passage were the mainstays of the Taoist and monster realm or the big shot. Therefore, the logistics personnel hurriedly trotted up with a respectful look. Although these two people looked very young, the appearance of a Taoist cultivator and a monster naturally couldn't be judged by common sense. "Seniors, it's my pleasure to meet you. I'm from the logistics department of the administration." The logistics personnel cupped his hands. "Administration?" Mo Xiaofei interrupted directly at this time. He frowned, looking at the logistics personnel with sharp eyes. The logistics personnel's heart beat fiercely for a moment. At this time, he didn't dare to look at the eyes of Mo Xiaofei. "Yes, I'm from the logistics department of the administration. I don't want to have any contact with this administration." After saying this, Mo Xiaofei waved his sleeve, jumped into the air, and flew away directly. Seeing this, Zhuifeng ignored the logistics personnel and hurriedly followed up. The logistics personnel looked at the two people in the distance. "My name is..." Can't you just listen to my self-introduction? He roared, picked up the stone and threw it. But he quickly calmed down. He stayed here not only to deliver the message to the people who came out, but also to report to the headquarters. Among Long Shirua's team, although he only recognized Xiao Xingma through the file, he had already reported it to the headquarters. At this time, he naturally had to report about these two young men. At this time, the passage suddenly opened. The logistics personnel suddenly quivered, and was ready for battle. He saw a beautiful woman in white walking out of the passage with a sword in her hand. Another person he didn't know. The logistics personnel muttered in his heart and walked forward. "Hello, I'm from the logistics department of the administration." But the woman in white looked cold and didn't listen to him. She stepped on the ground and flew into the night like a fairy. "My name is..." Alas. When the sky was about to brighten, the passage opened again. This time, it was 100 Tribulation Taoist who walked out. Kelowna was the leader of the Tao world, the sect master of Kunlun, and the evergreen member of the Tao Association. This was the information that almost everyone in the administration memorized immediately after joining the job. President 100 Tribulation. You finally came out. You are? 100 Tribulation Taoist looked at the man in front of him in surprise and asked in confusion. President 100 Tribulation, I'm from the logistics department of the administration. He was so touched. Wait a minute. What's that? Unexpectedly, 100 Tribulation Taoist frowned and interrupted at this time. He looked at the thick fog in front of him with a dignified gaze. I just want to introduce myself. In the dim lobby, the candles hanging on the wall were suddenly lit. The orange light illuminated every part of the lobby. In the center of the lobby, Luochio slowly walked out of a distorted space, as tall as a person. Beside him, Luoya looked uneasy. Her hands nervously grabbed Luochio's clothes and followed him out. Don't be afraid, from now on, you'll live here. Luochio looked at Luoya with a smile and said softly, I'll accompany you. At the back of the lobby, there was a slight sound at this time, which easily attracted Luochio's attention. Is there anyone here? Luochio subconsciously looked at Yuyi. Miss Maid held her face at this time. Oh, Miss Nero seems to still be in the washroom. I'll go and take a look. Master, you rest first, I'll make tea for you right away. Luochio nodded and walked to the study. Luoya was unwilling to let go of her hand, so he could only take her with him. Chapter 11-12. Creak, yeah. As the door of the washroom slowly opened, a gust of cold air drifted out at this time. At the same time, a withered hand with finger bones that looked like branches suddenly reached out and grabbed the door. Miss Maid took a step back and looked down at him. The hand moved the door panel inwards little by little. In the dim light, a face that was almost buried under the cheek was slowly rising with white hair. Miss Maid could even clearly see the desperate look on the face. Oh, Miss Nero, are you all right? Miss Maid asked softly. You try for 20 days, only drink water, see, it's my fault. Miss Maid was sincerely apologetic at this moment. I'm really sorry. Please wait for a while, I'll prepare some food for you to recover your body right away. Miss Maid finished and left in a hurry, as if she was eager to make up for her mistake. Seeing this, Nero had to crawl out of the washroom bit by bit. Ordinary people could only drink water to maintain their hunger for 7 or 8 days, and they would have died long ago. She could hold on for so long because of her well-tempered body. But even so, during this period, the pain Nero had to endure every day increased exponentially. The pain in her body had to be suppressed regularly with medicine. Without medicine, he could only endure it. This was already a huge burden on the body. Furthermore, it was true that this body had been tempered thousands of times, but the more a body was tempered like this, the more it would consume a shocking amount of energy. In the hall, Taisetsu put Teiyinzi, who was in a daze, on the ground. Since he was picked up by himself, Teiyinzi had been like this all the time. At this time, he seemed to have accepted his fate. He leaned against the foot of the tea table and stared blankly at the old gramophone in the corner. Taisetsu, right? Well, yes. Taisetsu nodded. He sat forward and asked, Bro, what's the matter? Teinzi raised his paw and pointed to the old gramophone in the corner, inside the cabinet. Count from the left, take out the 9th disc. It's heavy, and the extra one is specially hidden by me. Can you help me take it out and play it? It should be no problem. Taisetsu thought for a while. Neither the boss nor the servant girl seemed to have warned him not to touch the things here. Of course, Taisetsu didn't have the habit of touching things here. He thought it should not be a big problem to play a song with the gramophone, so he agreed readily and asked curiously, By the way, bro, why do you suddenly want to listen to songs? Teinzi looked at Taisetsu helplessly, and said in a low of vicissitudes of life, I was a decent man when I was alive. It's not too much to ask for something I like before I die. Of death. The last meal of a condemned prisoner can be more sumptuous. Bro, what have you done? Taisetsu shook his head. But he was the kind of person who would do what he promised, so he still walked towards the gramophone. Teinzi sighed at this time, looking at Taisetsu squatting down to look for the record. To tell you the truth, I was a decent man before. I was in charge of a big project of the club. Is it this one? Taisetsu took out a vinyl disc according to Teinzi's words, and took out a record from the cover. But there's only one? Didn't you say there was a folded one in there? Teinzi was startled, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he just sighed and looked at Taisetsu. My birthday is on the 17th day of the 4th lunar month. My favorite food is the osmanthus cake from Baifengzhai in Luoyang, but now it's hard to find, so the osmanthus cake from the supermarket will do. Also, I don't know if there's such a thing in the basement, but it's best to burn a few boxes. By the way, remember to burn a copy of The Straw Hat King when it's finished, but if the author says there's a new challenge waiting for him after the end, or something like that, then you don't have to burn it, just burn the author. Listening to Teinzi talking about things to take note of, Taisetsu became more and more curious about what this dignified black soul envoy before him had done. Was it referring to what happened in the Penglai treasure vault? At this time, some strange sounds came from the corridor. Teinzi was still talking endlessly, as if he had entered a deserted land, and did not care at all. Taisetsu looked curiously and saw a mummified woman wrapped in a bath towel crawling out of the corridor little by little. Taisetsu vaguely remembered that this seemed to be the one who was locked in the bathroom before leaving. Taisetsu looked at the current Nero, and then looked at the current appearance of Teinzi. At the same time, the image of Wang who covered in feces flashed through his mind, and he suddenly shuddered. He heard footsteps coming from the direction of the kitchen. Almost without thinking, as if by instinct, Taisetsu stuffed the record into the envelope at the fastest speed, then quickly walked back to the sofa and sat upright. A strong desire to survive even drove Taisetsu to show a stiff smile. You Mississippi. Are you done? The maid opened the curtain and walked out at this time with a tray in her hand. She looked at Taisetsu sitting upright at this time and felt a little strange. Mr. Taisetsu, are you very hot? Hot? No? Oh, maybe I just finished exercising? Didn't I just have a fight in the Penglai treasure vault? Taisetsu subconsciously wiped his forehead. When did I sweat? There is ice water on the counter, fresh. The maid smiled slightly. You will be fine after a rest. Taisetsu nodded stiffly. Later, the maid walked to Nero as if she didn't see Teinzi, and slowly put down a plate of food on the tray. Mississippi Nero, this is the food I made for you carefully. It can supplement the nutrition you lack. So, please enjoy it. A pot of hot and explosive mixture. The maid left with the tray and walked toward the study. Taisetsu glanced at the back of the maid who had left, and then looked at the food in front of Nero. Nero was still weak and shriveled on the ground, and the food was placed in front of her on the floor. He suddenly felt the malice from the maid, but at this time, Nero stuck out her tongue little by little toward the food on the plate. Taisetsu widened his eyes, opened his mouth, and felt that his breathing seemed to be rapid. "Don't eat it! Don't eat it! I will lose my dignity if I eat it! Hold on!" Finally, Nero licked the food on the plate and lost her dignity. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. When Yu Yi walked into the study, Luocio was squatting on the sofa in the corner, combing the hair on Luo Ya's face with gentle eyes. Luo Ya was lying on the sofa at this time, and seemed to have fallen asleep. "Master." Luocio turned back and made a gesture of whispering. The maid nodded, softly put down the tray and tea silently, and then came to Luocio's side. "She must be very tired." The maid looked at the little girl's delicate face at this time. "Wait a minute, I will clean up a room." Luocio nodded and then took off his coat. Seeing this, Miss Maid walked to the back and helped to take off the coat. Then, she covered Luoya with the coat. "You can always guess what I want to do." The maid looked back and smiled faintly. Luocio waved his hand at Luoya. The air shook, and the entire sofa was covered by an invisible cover. Luocio then returned to the desk and sat down. "By the way, how is Miss Nero?" "Nothing serious." The maid looked natural. Luocio just nodded and didn't ask. He looked up at Yu Yi and suddenly said, "Califar." Beside the desk, the maid who was pouring flower tea for Luocio suddenly stopped. At the same time, the steaming tea was about to overflow. It was not because the maid was absent-minded, but because she was still at this moment. Sure enough, Luocio's finger suddenly tapped on the table, and the falling tea also stopped. Luocio closed his eyes at this time. In the club, everything seemed to become black and white. Taisetsu, who was sitting upright, also stopped. Nero, who was burying her face in the food, also didn't move. Taiyinzi still lowered his head and didn't move. Luocio sighed softly, stood up and walked out of the study alone. Soon after, he came to the lowest floor of the club and opened the door that only he could enter. Everything here was the same as the last time he left. Luocio walked to the altar. At this time, the altar began to rise slowly, and the pillar inlaid with gold and silver cards gradually appeared. Luocio walked around the pillar twice. He suddenly stopped. "This is actually not good, if there is no one who can talk to me." It was dead silent here, only Luocio's voice sounded. "Accept freedom." Luocio looked at the altar in front of him and said expressionlessly, "I can do anything I like, right?" The pillar on the altar slowly descended. Luocio looked at it, took 2 steps back, then turned around and walked out of the room where the altar was, and returned to the study again. The moment he sat down, everything returned to normal. The flower tea was still steaming, and the fragrance that could make people feel peaceful spread out. Luocio looked at Yu Ye's side face at this time. Finally, Yu Ye's wrist moved and the teapot was set straight. A cup of flower tea that was 80% full was completed. "I picked some fresh ones before I went out. Master, please have a taste." She took the teacup and walked to Luocio's side. She bent over and put down the teacup without any change on her face. Luocio couldn't help but reach out his hand and touched Yu Ye's cheek. Miss Maid was stunned. "Master." Miss Chambermaid turned round on this occasion. Luocio was now in the embrace of Miss Maid, like a child who wanted to ask for something. He put his ear on Miss Maid's body, as if he wanted to listen to something. She didn't say anything, just closed her eyes, and gently held her master's head with her hands. They hugged each other like this. After a long time, Luocio took a deep breath, letting go of Yu Yi, and said apologetically, "I seem to have forgotten myself. Master, what happened to you that made you unhappy?" Yu Yi shook her head. Her tolerance was completely above her etiquette, but she was tolerant to her master in front of her. Luocio seemed to return to normal. He looked at Yu Yi, and his eyes were different from before. "I just suddenly wanted to hug you, and thought that you wouldn't refuse me. Now it seems that I wasn't refused." Miss Maid just took Luocio's hand and put it in front of her chest, and said softly, "Yu Yi only belongs to you. As long as I'm still the boss of this shop?" Luocio suddenly asked. But Miss Maid said, "If please take me away." One day, before the seed of love that was gushing out of my heart at this moment disappeared completely, I could really fall in love with you. Stay with me for a while. The pendulum clock on the wall swayed, and the ticking sound filled every place in the lobby. When Yu left, she took Loyal with her to decorate a new room for her. Luocio walked out of the study room. Nero had eaten all the food on the plate and even licked it quickly. Now she was leaning against the counter, looking at the ceiling blankly, but her breath was better. Taisetsu saw the boss come out, and he was about to greet him, but Luocio waved his hand to stop Taisetsu. He came to Nero's side. Although she ate the food on the plate very cleanly, and there was no food residue on her face, there were still some grease stains left. "I'm really sorry." Along with Luocio's voice, Nero's body was also recovering at an incredible speed. She returned to her previous state, no more, no less. Her injuries were still there. Luocio took out a handkerchief and personally wiped the grease on Nero's face. "In the next transaction, I will give Miss Nero a suitable discount. I'm sorry, I can only give such compensation." Nero's eyelashes moved at this moment. After recovering, she looked at Luocio and suddenly said, "Boss, you are so good to me. Aren't you afraid that your servant girl will quietly erase me from all senses?" "Miss Nero, you must be joking." Luocio smiled and said, "How can we do anything to hurt the customer? Even if we inadvertently cause losses, we will compensate immediately." Nero smiled. She reached out to Luocio's ear and whispered, "In order to survive, I can do anything. This is your personal freedom, Miss Nero." "That's good." Nero narrowed her eyes at this time. "I still feel unsafe, so, from now on, I want to sell myself. I will sell myself, and then I will become your person. You can't refuse, right?" "The customer's request. Also, you said to give me a discount." Taiyinzi on the side suddenly moved at this time, looking at Nero pitifully. "Does this silly girl think it's okay?" Chapter 11:13. From a personal point of view, Luocio didn't approve of Nero becoming a member of the club, because Nero had his spiritual seed in her body. If possible, Luocio didn't want to lose Nero's vision just like that. However, based on the club's most basic transaction principle, since the customer made a request, the transaction would be triggered under the premise that the price could be paid. It would be involved in endless transactions, whether the customer was willing or not. But the power had reached that level, and it would never change. This might be a part of the lost freedom, a feeling of helplessness. Luocio knew that step might come soon or late, but it would inevitably come. Most likely, he would become like the previous one and lose interest in everything. Just like the club's motto, "You need to pay for what you get." He would become the agent of the eternal and indestructible origin in the endless time and space, and also a puppet under the will of the origin. It was also equivalent, right? Nero's request was approved by the altar. In fact, every transaction would be approved by the altar, and the most important transaction contract would appear. The power of the contract came from the altar, and Luocio was just a witness and executor. Nero's biggest wish was to live. In the club, the customer's most basic thoughts would always be magnified. Perhaps your spirit is strong enough, your will strong enough, and you can resist. But you will be stimulated in the end, because you have been here for a long time, because you have made enough transactions, because you have walked on a path of no return from the very beginning. She seemed to only want to live, no matter what kind of way. But the request to live could be very big. It could live until the end of time or even eternity. Obviously, the price of eternity was so great that it was almost immeasurable, but there seemed to be a shortcut. For example, the way to become a Black Soul envoy. Perhaps this was Nero's idea at this time. You will lose your freedom. Your body and your will no longer belong to you from now on. Your life and death will only depend on a single thought from now on, and you can't betray my will. Moreover, in the process of carrying out the task, you may encounter a terrible situation that may lead to death. Even so, are you willing to do it? This was a transaction, different from the transformation of Taisetsu. Taisetsu first became the club's property, and then was transformed by Luochio. He had no right to choose. At this time, both Taisetsu and Taiyinzi silently watched Nero, because Nero was likely to become their kind in a few minutes. Boss, is it really good to do business like this? Nero looked at Luochio's eyes at this time. Aren't you afraid that the customer is unwilling? Luochio smiled and said, if we make it clear, there won't be too many arguments in the future. And the choice has always been in the hands of the customer. Nero said indifferently, but the more beautiful thing is always on your side, isn't it? Although there is the so-called choice, where can there be a better choice than this? Looking at the parchment slowly floating in front of her, Nero easily pressed her palm on it. She whispered, I don't want to hurt like this anymore. The transformation process was very simple. Under the power of the club, the transformation process was even less than 10 seconds. Nero gave up her human body and obtained a body composed of the source of the foreign body. The scars on her body disappeared at this moment. She looked at her brand new body and felt the relaxed feeling that she had never felt before. Even without the use of drugs, it didn't hurt anymore. It doesn't hurt anymore. It hurts so much that it flies away. The voices of her childhood parents suddenly flashed in Nero's mind. It really doesn't hurt anymore. Nero looked at Luochio and smiled. Luochio saw a drop of tears slowly flowing from her eyes. This was the first time that Luochio saw Nero's smile. It was not cruel, indifferent, ferocious, frivolous, malicious, and evil. It was just a very ordinary smile. It was so ordinary. There was a new black soul envoy. Miss Maid was not too surprised. She didn't even show any unpleasant expression because it was Nero. In the past hundreds of years, Miss Maid had witnessed many outstanding people become black soul envoys and watched them die in various difficult tasks again and again. She had long been used to it. Miss Maid's mood even seemed very good. When Boss Luo finished transforming Nero and returned to the study room again, Taiyinzi was surprised to find that he might not die. Black soul envoys were managed by Miss Maid. At this time, Miss Maid was carefully explaining the work of black soul envoys to Nero. First, you are not allowed to use coercive means to force guests to trade, but you are allowed to use the means of inducing. Nero shrugged indifferently. Second, we don't have any real enemies. Every guest who comes here, even if he used to be hated by you, must maintain the most basic respect for customers. Nero still shrugged indifferently, indicating that she knew. Third, the master is everything to us. We are not allowed to have any thoughts of betraying the master. Especially, we can't be dissolute. We have to put on clothes immediately after bathing. Nero opened her mouth but didn't say anything in the end. The education was still going on, but it seemed that it would take some time. Crouching Dragon Villa's underground medical room. Momo came to visit Jean-Eyre almost every day. At this time, there were only 2 logistics staff and 1 medical staff left in Crouching Dragon Villa. Jean-Eyre's current condition couldn't be transferred. Fortunately, Crouching Dragon Villa was built with great care and self-sufficient power could be maintained all the time. As for the thick fog, it was blocked outside by the enchantment released by the administration. Therefore, the medical equipment here could be used. Perhaps if this enchantment could be moved, it wouldn't stay here but be used to move in the thick fog. Perhaps because it was too boring to stay here, the nurse, who was ordered to stay, began to clean up. For example, she planned to wash Jean-Eyre's clothes. There were still blood stains on the clothes which were taken off during the treatment. Then, she put it in a corner and ignored it. When she picked it up, something suddenly fell out of the clothes. It was a small bell. This bell, the sound of the bell falling to the ground, attracted Momo's attention. He walked to the nurse and picked up the bell on the ground, shaking it twice subconsciously. The crisp sound seemed to carry a kind of strange magic which could calm people down. "Mr. Momo, is it broken?" The nurse looked at Momo anxiously. Of course, she knew what kind of people lived in Crouching Dragon Villa. This ordinary-looking bell could be a magic tool or something similar to those Taoists who could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. If it was damaged, she could not afford to compensate. "No, it's okay." Momo smiled. "Go do your work." The nurse left with a worried look. Momo looked at Jean Eyre's sleeping appearance through the glass, feeling helpless. "So you've been carrying this thing all the time." Momo got it from Lai Kaixing, the successor of the cloth sect. On the first day, he lived in Crouching Dragon Villa, or it was given by Lai Kaixing. Momo didn't expect Jean Eyre to carry this bell all the time. Momo shook his head, holding the bell in his hand and walking out of the infirmary. There was a logistician here, so there was someone watching over the place. Thanks to the enchantment, the interior of Crouching Dragon Villa wasn't covered by the thick fog. But looking from the courtyard, Crouching Dragon Villa looked like a small world isolated in the thick fog. The fog was so thick that the villa looked dark. If one didn't look at the time, he couldn't even tell whether it was morning or afternoon. But Momo didn't expect that he would meet the mysterious man with the bronze mask who was causing a huge commotion outside at this time. It was in the courtyard of the cloth sect. Momo didn't even know when the man came and how he passed through the enchantment. At this moment, the man with the bronze mask was standing in the courtyard, looking up at a parasol tree in the courtyard. Momo was greatly frightened. There were only 2 logisticians left in the villa, but they couldn't be counted on. He was the only one left. The only thing that gave Momo some confidence was that he got back his luggage, magic tools and talismans from Dragon Tiger Mountain, so he wouldn't have to resort to close combat. He held a powerful talisman in his hand, walking into the courtyard. Momo had a feeling that the man with the bronze mask came for him. Heaven Heart 71 Generation. How dare you break into Crouching Dragon Villa? Momo rushed into the courtyard, pointing the nameless black wooden sword at him, shouting angrily, "What the hell do you want? Is your partner okay?" The man with the bronze mask turned around, looking at Momo, saying indifferently, "I heard he survived, right?" Momo clenched his teeth. "It's all because of you, that Jean. Damn it. As the saying goes, those who survive a great disaster are bound to have good fortune later." The man with the bronze mask said, "He's like that, and so are you. This proves that you have a strong destiny, but that doesn't mean you can squander it without restraint. You might be able to see a new world, so why don't you cherish it?" "Cherish it?" Momo sneered. If they hadn't been rescued that day, then so many seniors of the Tao world and experts of the demon clan would have been sacrificed? Do you want to sacrifice so many people's lives for your own selfish desire? Who are you to judge whether they'll survive or not? Who are you to judge whether they should stay or not? Those who achieve great things must have sacrifices. The man with the bronze mask said indifferently, "In ancient times, weak tribes would abandon their old and weak clansmen in order to maintain their vitality, leaving more food for their descendants. It's the same principle. They've exhausted their potential in the long years. Even if the spirit chi recovers, they won't be able to break through their current state. Therefore, they put their hopes on those with potential and were willing to sacrifice themselves. In your opinion, it's only for their own selfish reasons." "They did it willingly?" Momo opened his mouth in surprise. "You don't know." The man with the bronze mask said, "The pain of not being able to progress further, the despair of dying at the end of one's lifespan. You haven't seen the scene where the road is still there but it's completely blocked. Cultivating for 100 years in vain. Cultivating hard for a few decades until their potential is exhausted and they're on the verge of despair. Yet, the days pass by mercilessly. Do you know all these?" Accompanied by the voice of the man with the bronze mask, many scenes appeared in front of Momo. Cultivators who chose to end their own lives in despair, demons who roared to the sky in grief and indignation, hatred, hatred, hatred. Kill, kill, kill. Momo didn't know how long it was, but he only felt cold sweat. That endless resentment and pain seemed to penetrate into the depths of his soul. The black wooden sword fell to the ground as he couldn't hold it firmly. Momo knelt on the ground weakly. He knelt in the endless unwillingness, anger, and despair. Those were the people and demons who had lost their lives in despair after their immortal paths were blocked. Until the sound of the bell suddenly rang, breaking this resentment like a bolt of lightning. Momo's mind was pulled out of the horror. He gasped for breath and looked at the man with the bronze mask in front of him. He didn't know when the man had that bell in his hand. Whether it's the Tao world or the demon world, it seems peaceful. The man with the bronze mask said slowly, "But how many undercurrents are surging, you may not realize it. It's accumulating, this despair has been accumulating, and this depression is increasing day by day. When that day comes, it can't bear it anymore, when it can't suppress it anymore, madness will follow, perhaps it will really go to the extreme. Do you know why the administration was set up after Xin was established?" Momo shook his head blankly. "Because it's even crazier." The man with the bronze mask said indifferently, "Taoists secretly use the lives of mortals to break the shackles. The demon clan has become crazier. They became more secretive, and their means became crazier and more extreme. If they couldn't absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, they would absorb the essence of mortals. The tranquility and inaction of the Taoists had long disappeared, and they had more or less turned into the demon clan, becoming the devil that devours humans. It was like a plague, quietly spreading to the Taoist and demon world. We only have two destinies, to die in madness, or to find a new breakthrough. If we don't find a breakthrough, we will only die crazily, and it will even engulf the entire mortal world. How could it be? You should feel lucky." The man with the bronze mask walked to Momo. "You should feel lucky that they finally chose to sacrifice, instead of going crazy. You should feel lucky that they are still willing to open a way for you to survive, leaving hope to you." Momo raised his head, looking at him. He slowly took off the bronze mask on his face. "Now, do you still think we did it for our own selfish interests?" Momo widened his eyes in disbelief. "It's you." Chapter 11:14. It was Lai Kaixing in front of him, not Tian Xin 71 generation. Momo was shocked, but he also understood something. Back then, after Zhang received the imperial edict, he was brought away by him. No matter where he hid or where he fled to, he would always be found by both Taoists and Taoists. It would be fine if it was those who were stronger than him, stronger in magic power, and terrifying in Taoist power, but later on, even people from all walks of life could easily find him. Even when he hid under the ancient well in Song Clan's ancestral house, he was still found. This ringing bell. Momo forced a bitter smile. "Have you planned all of this since you gave it to Zhang? In fact, I don't know who can get the edict. I didn't think about this when I gave it to him. I can only say that everything is predestined." Bronze-masked man. Lai Kaixing said indifferently, "Of course, I don't mind if you think it's premeditated. You stole Tian Xin 71 generation's identity?" Momo took a deep breath. He suddenly felt fear. Taoists and even the administration had been targeting Tian Xin 71 generation. But if it wasn't Lai Kaixing, but Lai Kaixing who was the 72nd generation as the successor of the cloth gown sect, he was respected by the Taoists and demons. As the representative of the Taoist Association, he had half an official background. He might have been in contact with the administration for a long time. He had been hiding in the light. He even used the power of the light to openly grasp the intelligence of the Taoist and demon realms and the administration. With such terrifying resources, even if it was the cotton cloak Tao who didn't specialize in feng shui and metaphysics, if it were another person, they would often be able to see through the situation first. This time, Lai Kaixing didn't answer Momo's question. He put on the bronze mask in front of Momo. "This time, I came here to do something. It's an accident to meet you. Since it's an accident, let it be brief." Lai Kaixing seemed to want to leave. Momo subconsciously threw out the talisman in his hand, but this powerful talisman of Dragon Tiger Mountain was blocked by an invisible force before it could get close to Lai Kaixing. Then, it turned into ashes. Seeing Lai Kaixing leaving, Momo hurriedly shouted, "Why did you expose yourself in front of me? Aren't you afraid that I will expose your identity?" "It doesn't matter whether you're exposed or not. Even if you know it's me, it won't change anything." Lai Kaixing's voice had already faded away. He had already disappeared into the thick fog. "Come back, Lai Kaixing. Use your own eyes to see the truth behind this peaceful world." Lai. Momo rushed forward, but he couldn't see the enemy's figure at this moment. There were only a few people left in the villa, and they were in charge of logistics, so Momo's movement obviously didn't alarm them. After Lai Kaixing left, Momo seemed to have lost his soul. He stayed in this courtyard for a while before walking out aimlessly. However, Yan Xiaoxi returned at this moment. Not only him, but also the 3 teams that had gathered to prevent the appearance of the 6th Jade Dragon Pillar. The plan to stop the 6th Jade Dragon Pillar failed. When Momo came to the hall of the villa, it wasn't difficult to see a trace of depression on everyone's face. Among all the people here, Momo only had a short contact with Yan Xiaoxi, Fire Cloud Evil God and Mr. Blind. He quickly walked to Yan Xiaoxi. "Section Chief Yan, what's your plan?" Yan Xiaoxi shook her head, believing that this was the best answer. She patted Momo's shoulder, asking casually, "Did anything special happen in the villa while we were away?" Momo opened his mouth, subconsciously wanting to tell her about Lai Kaixing, but at this moment, he suddenly remembered what Lai Kaixing said before he left. "Go and take a look at the truth beneath this peaceful world." He didn't know why, but the words that came out of his throat were blocked. Momo pretended to look at the others, saying quickly, "Nothing special. Besides, there's a barrier outside, normal people can't come in." "Is that so?" Yan Xiaoxi looked at Momo thoughtfully, then nodded. Now that the 6th Jade Dragon Pillar had appeared, there was only one left. This was the most urgent thing. Yan Xiaoxi just kept an eye on Momo's abnormality. At least she wouldn't waste her energy too much at this moment. "I believe everyone is tired. Have a good rest, there's a tough battle waiting for us." Yan Xiaoxi dismissed them temporarily, then left with Fire Cloud Evil God and Mr. Blind. Momo actually wanted to do something, but he didn't know what to do, so he left dejectedly. Go and see how to see. He unconsciously walked out of the gate of Crouching Dragon Villa, looking at everything covered by the thick fog. He couldn't see anything. Momo subconsciously walked into the fog. Of course, he didn't plan to go far, but the villa seemed a bit depressing. He just wanted to change to a more unfamiliar environment. As he walked, a door appeared in front of him. Momo had seen this door before, this old pinewood door. After Fire Cloud Evil God returned to the courtyard, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. As his disciple, Yan Xiaoxi was very nervous, carefully helping Fire Cloud Evil God to sit down. At this moment, Mr. Blind took out a small porcelain bottle, instructing Yan Xiaoxi to let Fire Cloud Evil God take the medicine inside. Senior Qing Xiaozi, what happened to Master? Yan Xiaoxi looked very calm, not panicking because of the chaos. Mr. Blind sighed. Your master used Tiger Soul Saber recklessly, consecutively using 2 of Tiger Soul Saber's unique skills. As the saying goes, the first drum builds up the spirit, the second will weaken, and the third will exhaust. Tiger Soul Saber is an ancient demonic saber, its ferocity is hard to tame. Once this saber intent erupts, it won't stop until death. With my help, your master forcibly suppressed it, so he naturally suffered some backlash. But don't worry, your master has a special physique. It won't take long for him to recover. Fire Cloud Evil God had already taken Mr. Blind's medicine, and was now meditating. Yan Xiaoxi looked at her master's gradually recovering breath, then secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She then looked at Mr. Blind. Taoist, now that the 6 jade dragon pillars have been erected, are you confident in calculating the exact location of the remaining 7th pillar? I need some time, Mr. Blind said in a deep voice. Before tomorrow, I will give you an answer. Although this formation was created by me, the appearance of the 6 pillars this time is very different. My senior apprentice brother has probably worked hard to improve it. At this point, Mr. Blind suddenly laughed bitterly. It's funny that I've always boasted of being the most outstanding person in the Linen Dao. Today, it seems that my senior apprentice brother's attainment has probably long surpassed me. Judging from the current location of the 6 pillars, my senior apprentice brother has really deduced the formation from back then to a near-perfect level. Heavens will 71 generation has probably been maintaining and preparing for a long time. Yan Xiaoxi said. Furthermore, after the Long Sha incident, he has already started painstakingly working on it. It's not surprising to use decades to deduce a formation, it's not surprising to have a breakthrough. Mr. was the one who created this formation, he's the source. The 71 generation only managed to deduce it based on this foundation, so please don't belittle yourself, Mr. You're not like your master at all. Mr. Blind smiled. He doesn't care so much. When it's time to ridicule me, he won't be careless at all. You old blind man, is this how you talk about someone else's master? Fire Cloud Evil God slowly opened his eyes. Master, how do you feel? Yan Xiaoxi asked concernedly. Fire Cloud Evil God stopped practicing and stood up. Other things aside, this old blind man's medicine is still very effective. His medicine can't be said to be the best, but the effect has always been very fast. Mister, you're very talented. Yan Xiaoxi could not help but look at Mr. Blind in admiration. This previous generation disciple of the Linen Dao was not only proficient in the art of mystical arts, but he also had extraordinary attainments in the art of healing. Moreover, his own strength was also unfathomable. What talented! I said he's an idiot. Fire Cloud Evil God snorted coldly. He obviously has outstanding talent, but when he does things here and there, it looks like he's full of knives, but none of them are sharp. Biting off more than one can chew, even a 3-year-old child would understand this principle, but when it comes to this blind man, it disappears without a trace. What a pity for this monstrous talent! If you were to walk a path alone, your cultivation might not be weaker than mine today. Look, even that mediocre senior brother of yours has surpassed you today. Yan Xiaoxi frowned, but did not say anything clearly. This was not the first time she had seen Fire Cloud Evil God's poisonous tongue. If I were to walk a path alone, I'm afraid I would have been beaten to death by you today. Mr. Blind shook his head. Enough with the nonsense. Tell your disciple to prepare something for me, I want to go into seclusion for a day. Fire Cloud Evil God waved his hand at Yan Xiaoxi, then sat down cross-legged again and closed his eyes, not saying anything. Ding-dang! The bell in front of the door rang all of a sudden. It was the 3rd time for Momo to come to this place. The cold, damp, and all the bad things had disappeared here. He could even smell some special fragrance, which made people feel relaxed unconsciously. But different from the previous 2 times, Momo saw a new face here, a young man with a scarf. As for the metal dog squatting at the young man's feet, Momo didn't care too much about it. Momo saw Nero, and of course Yu Yi, who was the maid. At this moment, Nero popped out her head from Yu Yi, waving to Momo. Oh, the righteous little brother, long time no see. Are you here to buy something? Come on, let me serve you. Saying this, Nero rushed to Momo at an amazing speed, pulling Momo's wrist and taking him to a table. Come on, what do you want to drink? She was quite enthusiastic. Perhaps Momo's appearance gave her the best excuse to escape from Miss Maid's education, to serve customers. Why are you? Nero's enthusiasm made Momo stunned. Oh, is it strange? Nero squinted her eyes and smiled evilly. From today on, I'm an employee of this shop. Momo opened his mouth with amazement, but didn't say anything in the end. Looking at the lively Nero, he thought of the pain Nero suffered by Miss Maid. She couldn't even hold on for 5 seconds before collapsing due to the severe pain. Momo didn't think this could be the reason to kill indiscriminately, but after experiencing these days, he had to admit that this could be the reason for others. He gave a bitter smile. Then, congratulations. Nero gave a start, looking at Momo with a strange look, suddenly turning back. General Manager, I can't serve this customer. Mr. Momo, what can I do for you? Mississippi Maid walked slowly to Momo, bending down slightly and asking. Momo looked at this perfect face, saying subconsciously, I don't know. I don't know why I came here. But I shouldn't have walked so far. Well. Miss Maid smiled faintly. Then, please wait for a moment, I'll call the master. Master, Momo gave a start, saying, Senior, you're back? Luocio hadn't received any business for a long time, in the lobby of the club. Undoubtedly, those who came to the lobby would be the club's customers. Mr. Momo, is there anything I can help you with? Luocio looked at Momo, slightly tilting his head and asking. Miss Maid and Nero, who had also changed into a maid costume, were standing side by side at this moment. Momo didn't seem to be used to being asked in this tone by the boss in front of him, or at least the boss who he used to regard as a senior. He frowned, opening his mouth several times but didn't say anything. Luocio smiled faintly, snapping his fingers. All of a sudden, the hall dimmed. Darkness spread from the surroundings, engulfing the lobby bit by bit. It spread to Luocio and Momo's side little by little. Even Miss Maid and Nero were shrouded in the darkness. The only space left was the 1-meter space where Luocio and Momo were sitting. It was a miraculous scene. It was obviously dark, but this space was visible, normal and very quiet. It was so quiet that it made people subconsciously feel a sense of security brought by privacy. Is it better? Luocio asked softly. Momo nodded, not daring to look at Luocio's eyes. He looked at the darkness beside him, suddenly smiling bitterly. Speaking of which, I said something that made you laugh at me. Luocio asked curiously, What do you mean? Momo lowered his head. Senior, do you think I should buy something from you? Luocio kept silent for a moment, saying slowly, It's not my decision to buy or not. It's only when you really have something you want to buy that it will appear in front of you. Chapter 11:15. I want to have a look at the truth. His tone was uncertain, but he plucked up his courage. Like falling into a maze, he carefully moved forward to explore the dark passage. Luocio looked at him, remaining silent for a while. This kind of gaze made Momo feel like facing the sea. When he was in Louis Village, he looked at the rising and falling of the sea, the rising and falling of the sun and the setting of the moon. It was the same feeling. Sure enough, it doesn't work? Momo said disappointedly. Luocio shook his head. Mr. Momo, do you think what you see is not true? Momo was stunned. Ordinary people would only see it with their own eyes, but even if they saw it with their own eyes, they would be deceived, but they couldn't distinguish it clearly. Because you are always in the truth, or you don't know whether it is true or not. Don't rush to make this decision. Luocio looked at Momo with a thin smile on his face, which was as thin as the mist attached to the full moon. How about listening to a story first? Momo nodded. Senior, please. In fact, it's a very interesting short video. Luocio changed to another sitting position. He put his hands on the table, closed his palms, and leaned forward slightly. He began the story. Suddenly, one day, a scientist invented a magical cream. The story started from a press conference. At this time, there was a woman with a scar on her face on the stage. After applying this cream, she returned to her original appearance in just a few minutes. Momo gave a start, but didn't interrupt. He just listened carefully. Actually, that's not all. There are other miraculous properties of this ointment. For example, it can make people's broken limbs grow back. And it can be taken orally, so a dying person can come back to life after eating it. It can also be injected, so children with mental retardation can become smart instantly. Senior, are you kidding me? Cream? Momo couldn't help frowning. Luocio didn't care about it, continuing, the development of the cream is still going on, more functions have been developed. For example, it can turn deserts into fertile fields, turn wastelands into forests, rejuvenate old people and make wealth. It can make scrapped machines brand new and even upgrade them. Since then, the environmental problems have been solved. The war-torn countries have welcomed peace. Diseases and hunger have become a thing of the past. In the end, the scientist even solved the problem of the production of the cream. It can be multiplied infinitely and become inexhaustible. Momo opened his mouth. Is this senior kidding me? This cream? Why don't you call it a wish machine? Luocio drank a mouthful of water to moisten his throat. People's lives can't live without this cream. But at this time, the country and the tycoons couldn't sit. Because of the appearance of this cream, the aggressive military operations could not continue, and all online production of goods had to stop. Stock prices began to plummet, and the economy was about to collapse. Momo gave a start, frowning suddenly. Suddenly, one day, there was such a report on the news. The raw material of this magical cream was made from dead babies. There were also many immoral materials added in. After that, similar reports began to occupy all the news channels. Suddenly, people found that all the news were negative news about this cream. Some people claimed that the cream was an incurable disease soon after they used it. Some said that the cream was actually a kind of virus, and they had personally experienced it. Some countries went to war over this cream. Then came the interesting thing. The country began to ban the sale of this cream. All the vendors who sold it were arrested, and all the factories that produced the cream were demolished. All the cream on the market was destroyed. Once it's illegal to keep a hairstyle for yourself. People started to fear this cream instead of chasing it. Senior, this. Momo was dumbfounded by this absurd story. But the story continued. Luocio's voice was so calm, like a pool of stagnant water that had lost its source and could only wait to dry up. This scientist was later arrested. He was convicted and could never step into the laboratory again for the rest of his life. The world returned to its original state. War and famine returned to some countries. Deserts and wastelands reappeared. People were no longer rich, but the rich were still the rich. Smart people returned to their original state. The amputees could only wear prosthetics. At the end of the story, we returned to the stage of the conference. But it was another product. A new cream started to appear on the market. This cream wasn't a magical cream. It didn't have so many functions. It couldn't bring the dead back to life or make people smarter. It only has one use, and that is to repair the scars on the face. But it needs to be used continuously. 1 treatment, 2 treatments, 1 month, 2 months. It can only be slowly changed. But it is effective, so the press conference was very successful, and people started to follow it. The story ends. This story had a huge impact on Momo. Countless thoughts flashed in his head. His face even paled. His Tao heart that had been polished to perfection seemed to be about to shatter at any moment. His voice trembled as he asked, "Senior, is this cream the truth?" Luocio said indifferently, "It's just a story. Senior, don't rush to make a choice." Luocio waved his hand, letting the surrounding darkness recede. Everything returned to its original state. Miss Maid and Nero were still at the side. Nero imitated Miss Maid's submissive look, but she would scratch the itchy place on her back or yawn from time to time. Under Momo's complicated gaze, Luocio stood up. "If you want to come, you can come. No one can stop you. But I hope you know what you want to buy next time you come." Momo was just sitting, but he felt everything was far away from him. He was just sitting, but the chair seemed to be moving, infinitely distancing him from Luocio, Miss Maid and Nero. He started to lose sight of them. He was pulled to a very far place, and the surrounding turned into endless darkness. Momo opened his eyes abruptly. He was surrounded by a vast expanse of whiteness. He was back in the thick fog near the crouching dragon villa. During the day, Ren Xiling was awakened by a rapid knock on the door. She had drunk quite a lot last night, and after meeting Ling Feng again, she happily drank some more. Therefore, after being woken up, Ren Xiling felt an unbearable headache, her stomach churned, and her mouth was dry. She really wanted to die. Ren Xiling opened the door while scratching her feathery hair. Seeing Lizzie, she yawned and leaned against the door frame. If you don't give me a proper reason, I'll stew you with rock candy. Oh, you're indeed the goddess of the editorial department. You look so pretty even without makeup. Lizzie's eyes shone with the desire to survive. I heard lotus seeds are more compatible with pears with rock candy? Ren Xiling pinched Lizzie's cheek. No. Sister Ren, look outside. Outside. Ren Xiling gave a start. She frowned and walked to the window. Pulling the curtains open, she saw that it was already a vast expanse of white outside. The entire town had unknowingly been completely shrouded in a thick fog. Lizzie was turning on the lights in the room back and forth, but the room was still dark. Look, there's a power outage and there's no signal on the phone. We've really experienced the life in the disaster area. Ren Xiling quickly combed her messy hair back with her fingers and said in surprise, "What's going on? Didn't they say that the fog would spread here in 2 or 3 days? How did it spread all the way here overnight?" Lizzie shook her head and thought for a while. Maybe the fog swelled because of drugs? Ren Xiling rolled her eyes and frowned. Where's Yukiko? She's packing. Lizzie said quickly. Didn't you say that Major Ling Feng would send someone to send us away this morning? So she started packing early in the morning. But in this case, do we have to leave on foot? No, will Major Ling Feng's people come back? I'm afraid it's very chaotic outside and they can't take care of us. Ren Xiling shook her head. No, Ling Feng won't go back on his words. Don't be lazy, pack your things and we'll meet downstairs in 10 minutes. This was a woman who could go out 5 minutes after waking up in the morning, so 10 minutes was more than enough. When Lizzie and Yukiko came to the first floor of the hotel with their luggage, Ren Xiling had already arrived and was smoking a cigarette. She was looking at the street outside through the glass window. The lobby of the hotel was very quiet at this time. There was not even a waiter. Ren Xiling lit some aromatherapy candles on the table. Day and night, this was probably the feeling. At this time, the door of the hotel was suddenly opened and a group of soldiers trotted in. They lined up in 2 rows and there was a path in the middle. At this time, Ling Feng, wearing a military uniform, walked in quickly with a calm face. Yukiko subconsciously tightened her body when she saw the soldiers coming in. Ling Feng quickly walked in front of Ren Xiling. Sure, Dumbo. Are you trying to intimidate me with your presence? Ren Xiling frowned. I said I would leave, so I will definitely leave. You don't have to scare me like this, right? Ling Feng heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Ren Xiling was still here. He waved his hand and gestured for Ren Xiling to sit down before he turned to the soldiers behind him and ordered, "Search!" 2 rows of soldiers rushed into each room of the hotel. After a while, the soldiers came back. Sir, we didn't find anything. Ling Feng nodded. I know. You go out first and guard outside. When the soldiers went out, Ren Xiling knew something was wrong. She frowned. Ling Feng, did something happen? I'm not sure. This town will become very dangerous from now on. Ling Feng said seriously. I can't reveal too much, but the original plan of sending you away has to be put on hold. I'll send you to the place where we're stationed for protection. We can't leave this place? The one who spoke was Yukiko. She asked in surprise. But she felt that her question was inappropriate, so she panicked and closed her mouth. Ling Feng was not angry because Yukiko was Ren Xiling's companion. It depends. If possible, I'll evacuate you as soon as possible. In fact, it'll be more dangerous if we leave now. Ren Xiling pulled Ling Feng aside and whispered, Dumbo, what happened? I know what I can write and what I can't write, but I don't like to be unclear. Ling Feng hesitated for a moment, then pulled Ren Xiling a few steps away and said, "There's something here that's attacking people. In the morning we found a lot of corpses. Their blood was drained and their bodies were like ice." "What?" Ling Feng nodded. The fog suddenly intensified early in the morning. It turned out that the first escort team was trapped, but when we arrived, almost all of them were dead. Only one of them survived, but he went crazy and said that he saw a man-eating monster. "There's really a monster?" Ren Xiling bit her thumbnail in shock. Ling Feng was not the type to joke, but this was too unbelievable. "We can't be sure, but it's something." Ling Feng's expression was grave as he said, "Actually, we discovered something last night. Last night, I left in a hurry because I received a report. In the back alley of the bar where you were drinking, several corpses were found. Their deaths were almost the same as those of the first batch of soldiers and civilians who were evacuated. From the morning until now, there are more corpses." Ren Xiling asked with uncertainty. Ling Feng took a deep breath and nodded. "There are more corpses. Now, even we don't dare to act rashly, let alone leave." Ren Xiling frowned, looking at Ling Feng. "You just came here with a team. Don't you care about anything else? The soldiers from the army are all in town. Before we came here, we've already rescued dozens of people. What are you thinking about?" "Okay." Ren Xiling nodded. "Just do what you need to do. I'll go back to your station with you now." Although Yukiko didn't look at them, she was trying hard to hear something. She glanced at her but didn't say anything. She was still mindlessly eating the snacks she got from the counter of the hotel, but she also heard every word of the conversation between Ren Xiling and Ling Feng.